All right, are we ready to go?
I am ready.
All right. We are live.
Yes, we are.
Tell your friends you're listening to the Verhoeven Effect podcast. I'm Conlon.
And I'm Nathan.
We have another very special episode. We have the
Hold on,
technically.
hold on. Hold on a second.
Oh.
My end. Hello, check, check, 1, 2. Oh, that's weird. Now, okay, do it all over again.
Okay. Tell your friends you're listening to the Verhoeven Effect podcast. I'm Conlon.
And I'm Nathan.
We have another very special episode. We have the technically 1991 movie Fried Green Tomatoes.
Yeah.
It was released in like limited theaters in December, I assume, for award season perspectives, but really a general release came in January, which either means they're hoping to, pick up, prestige movie watching, or they were just burying it in January. I'm not exactly sure. The movie was fairly successful, so it worked out anyways.
Yeah, I mean, it was actually a surprise hit. They made more money than they thought it would. So
Yeah. Released January 24th, 1992. Directed by John Avnet, who hasn't really directed a whole lot of stuff that I recognize. He's kind of like a television director now.
yeah,
He's directed a couple of bad Al Pacino movies, like 88 Minutes and Righteous Kill.
yeah,
And he's probably more prolific as a producer because he produced the Mighty Ducks series,
oh, okay,
series of movies and the series. He did the movies and the series. He is an executive producer on Black Swan.
really,
Yeah. What are the other ones that are recognizable? Yeah, there's Righteous Kill again. Oh, Sky Captain in the World of Tomorrow.
that's a cool looking movie.
Yeah. He's a approver on Boomtown, a cop movie or cop series that I like that kind of survived. I think that was a. Oh no, I'm thinking of something else. I don't know what Boomtown is. Is it Boom? Yeah, that's.
Yeah,
Yeah, it was Boomtown. Yeah, okay. It was on NBC, then it switched to TNT, and then it died. And everybody liked it because it was just a very dramatic kind of The Wire, but less good. But even a flawed The Wire is better than almost anything on regular television. So,
yeah, well, yeah,
he produced Fried Green Tomatoes. What are the other ones that I've seen before? Nah, I guess. Oh, Risky Business. That was one of his other ones. So, yeah, more of known for his producers and his being a producer than directing stuff. The director of photography was Jeffrey Simpson, an Australian dude who this is kind of like the most famous thing he did.
what's the most famous thing he did in America? He does a lot of stuff in Australia that's really it's well respected and stuff, but it's kind of Australia centric stuff. So
Yeah.
he did that that zombie movie.
Oh yeah, they made it based on that short movie. Yeah.
Yeah.
Netflix, yeah.
He did that. Was the
Oh, there's a bunch of infamous movies he's done. Well, so there's Life, which that was like the Eddie Murphy, Martin Lawrence movie. I remember lots of people I remember being disappointed in. That could just be a white thing. I don't know. Infamously, he was cinematographer on Glitter, the Mariah Carey bomb.
I thought everyone loved that. I thought that movie was beloved, but it was like the best $50 million they ever spent to make something.
Cinematographer
Not
that
quite
movie.
Purple Rain.
He was cinematographer on Black and White, which is just an intentionally racially charged movie that I believe missed the point entirely, other than just to be controversial.
Yeah.
I believe that's the movie where Robert Downey Jr. Like basically they caught on camera him pissing off Mike Tyson and getting punched.
Oh, okay.
At least I think so. That's just a rumor. I mean, that might be the only thing they had in the movie. Like, we'll pretend this was actually him getting mad at you or whatever. Because that's, that's all people want is for Mike Tyson to get mad and punch people. So
It's exciting. Yeah.
and then Under the Tuscan Sun, which I've never seen it, but as far as I know, it was like a beloved kind of like, like I don't, what is that? It's like just a woman finding herself in Italy
Yeah,
or whatever.
it's like yeah, she goes to she like gets divorced, and then she goes to like Tuscany to learn about food or something. It's stuff that people that like whose husbands made a lot of money and they get divorced can like, I'm going to discover myself in Europe, and it's like
Yeah.
it's everyone's fantasy. Because around here, when you get divorced, it's like, well, I got to move to a trailer park now. Got to deal with the quirky meth addicts now because my husband left me and I have no meaning to my life. So yeah, that's.
But I think there's like that
Was in that too.
What's that?
Yeah, I think it was a Diane Lane movie.
Yeah. Because she had some like sex thriller that she did with Michael Douglas. I think like the year before.
Oh, okay.
Says here's her range. Now she's doing kind of a quirky finding herself movie. There's also like that movie like Eat, Pray, Love. I think is basically similar, but I believe people like Under the Tuscan Sun better. But I don't know. I don't care. Yeah. Anyways, that's Jeffrey Simpson.
Yeah.
Written by it's a novel by Fanny Flagg, but the screenplay is a combination of Fanny Flagg and Carol Sobieski. So it's not an ampersand, so they didn't write it together. And in fact, Carol Sobieski died like a year before the movie released.
Oh, okay.
So,
she was the one that almost made this into a musical.
Yeah. Or was it a musical or was it just like a stage play?
It was written as a musical, I guess. They thought it would be a good because there's a lot of like musical undertones to it. But yeah, they originally like, let's make this into a musical, and then the director and everyone's like, nah, I'm not doing that. They decided, no, we're going another way.
Yeah, I guess it was in production since like 1987 because in the book the present takes place in 1986. I don't know where in the present's supposed to take place in this movie because it doesn't explicitly say, but I think it's probably supposed to be 86. But
you can always tell by her car. Her car is a 1991 Ford Escort.
Oh, okay.
So it's like that's the that's how if the time is ambiguous, I just go to the Internet Movie Car database and like, what kind of car did they use? Okay, well, that's what year it is then. The newest car is here it is.
All right.
Unless it's a time travel movie or something, which I don't believe Fried Green Tomatoes was about time travel. It was story time travel, but yeah.
Of course, the cast is Kathy Bates, coming off of her Oscar win for Misery.
Yes. Switch gears, Kathy. Mind you, was 6 years younger than me when she filmed this movie. Kathy Bates has always been an eternal 50. Like she's one of those actresses, but like, her greatest work she did in her late 30s. But they always cast her as someone who's like 20 years older.
Yeah. She's still around doing stuff. She does a lot of TV nowadays, but yeah, she's still out there. Jessica Tandy, coming off of 2 years previous, her Oscar win for Driving Miss Daisy. She was the titular Miss Daisy.
Mm-hmm.
And Mary Stuart Masterson, who I don't know. Do you remember her from anything really?
I'm trying to think of what her like before this. I don't know. She was in. I know in the 70s she was like a teenage actress. I think it was in the Stepford Wives. Like,
okay.
I remember she was in that, but she was like a teenager.
Because I've like heard her name all the time, so I wonder if like I've just heard it like in a bunch of like Hollywood rumor stuff where it's like she almost got like every role in Hollywood and then she just didn't. She just got all the other roles or something like
She was
that.
in a Francis Ford Coppola movie about the guys who work at like the National Cemetery,
Huh.
the Gardens of Stone. Yeah, so I know she did that, and she was also in Some Kind of Wonderful. Which
Yeah, I remember I never seen it, but I remember trailers for Benny and June, which that's just a movie with um, Johnny Depp being weird, and then she's the titular June in that. But I've never actually seen that movie, nor do I know if it's good. All I remember is the potato dancing scene in it,
Oh, okay.
where he puts two
Johnny
forks.
Johnny Depp never was able to capitalize on that acting weird as a career.
Yeah, I think that would be post Edward Scissorhands as well. So
Yeah.
but yeah, I don't know. Yeah, so like I look at her filmography and it's like I don't really remember, but like that name sounds really familiar and I don't know why. No, you know, she's been around for you. She's still acting, but
Yeah.
does a lot of TV now. But you know, it's just what's available.
Well, and it's also like, what do you want to do? You know, the rest of your life.
Yeah, it's like, well, you're 50 and a woman. Like, we don't know what to do with you. I don't know.
New ideas. Yeah. See, I used to mix her up with was it Elizabeth Mastrantonio from I think she was in The Abyss. She was like the female lead in The Abyss.
Oh, okay.
Because those names sound similar. They don't look
Yeah.
anything alike, but it's like, oh, is that? No, it's not her. It's the other.
Well, also it stars Mary Louise Parker, which I guess because their name is both Mary. I guess on set the director called Mary Stuart Masterson. He called her Stu, and she called Mary Louise Parker Lou. So it was Lou and Stu on set.
Oh, okay. That would be confusing. Okay.
Hey, Nathan, do you have a history of fried green tomatoes?
I remember it was when did I know because I like Driving Miss Daisy.
Yeah.
I always thought that was a cool movie just because mainly because of the actors and the story was great. And it's like, well, I you know, Jessica Tandy's in, she's in this movie, you know, a while later. And I do remember I've watched this a couple times when I was, because I would have been like 16 or 17 when this movie came out. I do remember seeing it a couple times. I did not see it in theaters, but I think we like rented it from like the video store.
This was just a staple of cable forever. Like I've seen this movie a bunch of times, but like now the movie's like completely different to me because all I remember about this movie when I was a kid was like, oh, isn't this about like old timey lesbians? There's like a bunch of train accidents and like they kill somebody and eat them. That's all I remember about fried green tomato. Oh, and the women's lib sexual health stuff that was like played off for comedy. I remember that stuff. That's to me, that's what this movie's about. And then watch it now, it's all about like fearing death and stuff like that.
Yeah,
it's like
dark scenes. Yeah.
The
creeping horror of inevitable death that comes for us all. Have fun. I mean, I know this movie made it established this kind of movie making for a while because they made a truckload of money. So I think they made this movie for $10 million and it made like $120 million in return, which is like that's like rarefied air for especially for movies back then. It's like that's an insane amount of money.
What that was interesting is like I'm pretty sure like this probably has its own name, but like the movie that starts with like you meet an unsuspecting person who then tells you their life story and it's like amazing and it's like, well, what are you doing here if you did all these amazing things, which is exactly what Forrest Gump is. And I don't know, I don't think this movie started that trend or anything like that has to exist before this, but it was weird watching this and like looking and thinking about Forrest Gump. It's like, oh, this is pretty much the same. They handle it pretty much the same way.
Oh, well, there's things about movies from the South that are dramas. They always have this kind of template. It's like, this is my past. This is what life was down like in this wretched hellhole. 30s and 40s. You know, the American South is not like the rest of the country. It's 50 years behind the Middle Ages most of the time, and it's like, yeah. So this is like, if you watch this, if you watch Steel Magnolias, Forrest Gump, there's a bunch of movies like in deep Southern settings, and it's a lot of them are like, yeah, this is I'm now here, but I was there, and this is what it was like growing up there. And so people in New York City and other large places that will see these movies are like, wow, that's crazy. And everyone's endearing and kind of fun. Even though Jessica Tandy has a British accent, to me, it's like so fun to listen to her. You know, it's like playing the character she does.
But yeah, here it's Alabama, and then for Forrest Gump that was Arkansas, wasn't it?
I thought Forrest Gump was also Alabama.
Oh, was he? Okay.
Because remember, he played for like the Crimson Tide.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that would be Alabama. So,
yeah.
What state does Forrest Gump take place in? Alabama. Okay, so two Alabama movies with similar structures.
Yeah, Alabama, Georgia. What is it? Alabama, Georgia, and is it Louisiana? There's like 4 states. It's like, yeah, they're like the hard 4 of you. Like, if you want to set a movie anytime between the 20s and the 80s, or like they're the most insanely racist, crazy places you can like set a movie in, and everyone will believe. I don't know what those places are actually like. I can assume. Oh, Mississippi. That's the other one. Okay. Yeah, it's like those are the ones that's like, oh, when you think of the South, it's like that. Those are the states. Even though technically Florida and Texas are like the South, but it's like that's a totally different animal.
Yeah, yeah, they're both unto themselves.
Yeah, Texas is its own country essentially, and so is Florida. Florida's just a juggernaut for voting. It's like the new nightmare state. To like, how can we win here? It's like, well, everyone's crazy, so.
Yeah, it's where all the people retire so that they can keep their money away from everybody.
Yeah. And when you're retired, it's not a bad thing. It's either that or eat cat food. Because I know all the people flee this state when they retire. Michigan doesn't. They don't care. Like, oh, you're on a fixed income. Yeah, sucks to be you. Should have moved to Florida. We need, we need all that money from you for our, property taxes. Or whatever else.
But yeah, this is definitely a staple of cable television growing up. They just played this, this was like every weekend. It was like basically like this and whatever.
Well, anything that does a good job like playing with you emotionally is like, oh yeah, everyone's gonna and it's upbeat.
Yeah.
It's like, even though cannibalism is a part of the story, it's like, it's humorous. It's fun cannibalism because a bad guy died.
Yeah. Also, like that part can be deniable.
Yeah,
like, it's just a tall tale. Yeah,
really mean that. It's like, yeah, it's like a Southern tale.
Yeah,
like when the devil went down to Georgia and someone paid him for his fiddle or something. It's like, well, that didn't really happen, or did it? Who knows? It's time for hog boiling.
Yeah, because
it's not like it was like Hannibal Lecter showed up. I would like to try some of this barbecue. Yes.
But yeah, that's always the thing about like, the South and these stories. It's like you have to find something charming and unreal about the South because the reality is far too boring and terrifying. It's like, I was born here, I learned nothing, and I did nothing.
Oh, I love like Conan O'Brien's like takedown of the South when he was before he became a writer, and when he was at Harvard, he wanted to be a serious historian, and he was like, we got to remember the South isn't really America. It's like kind of its own sub-America. It's like it's the only part of a country that's never known defeat. It's been defeated in war. It's the poorest part of the country. It's the only part of the country where there's like a racial caste system that still exists. And yeah, he had this whole thing about, because he was talking about literature in the South, like, why is it different? And it's like, well, yeah, because it's not like New York or something where it's just all progress and victory. The South is like, that's where the hard people come from, that they have to fight in all our wars because you got to have those guys because yeah, they've been out shooting hogs and deer all their lives. So handing them a rifle and telling them to go kill Germans isn't like, oh, what are you talking about? It's like, oh, okay, I got that. Let's go do this, you know.
Whereas
And they're also it's also fun to portray people from the South as being like intellectually deficit and you know and things like that. Even though it's like there's no evidence of that because like their best people are as smart as the best people anywhere in the country, but you've always got to have this folksy charm that just like wouldn't exist. Like Martin Scorsese couldn't do folksy charm in like Mean Streets or something like it. No, it doesn't work. You have to do a story.
I don't know. Sometimes like you meet like engineers from different parts of the country. It's like, here's an engineer from Michigan. Like, okay, he seems like he knows what he's doing. He also doesn't seem to like people. And here's an engineer from Alabama. He likes people a lot. He doesn't seem to know what he's doing at all.
Yeah. Well, hell, Bob, we're both engineers. Let's figure this out. Now you sit down and start doing some calculations. I'm going to sit over here and drink this whiskey. And we're going to figure this out. We're going to do this together. And everyone's like, oh, he's so charming. It's like, yeah, he really elevated the team here. And the guy from Michigan's like, he didn't do a fucking thing. We did all the work. He just sat around and was whimsical and charming.
I remember
damn, it worked.
I remember we're working on fifth echelon maintenance. I think it's called fifth echelon maintenance. It's like because they don't make AAVs anymore, so they basically have to strip them all the way down to their bare parts and completely rebuild them as if they were new, but they're technically not. And like we had to water jet out these like giant things out of steel and like lift them with this giant crane out of it, and we were just like, you know, cutting the jigsaw piece out of the big piece of steel and then putting the crane down and kind of lifting it up and like shaking it with the crane. And he's like, it's not safe, but it's quick.
Yeah. Oh yeah. We had a couple of guys. There was a couple of like guys at work. Just obviously from like Alabama or something, like the way they talked, but for some reason they've been living here for years, but they still talk like that. And it's like they had all the funny names for the guys they were working with. It's like, oh, here comes Blister. He shows up after the work is done. Don't you, Blister? You know, and I feel the other one is like, oh, this here's Shadow. And it was a black guy. And I was like, dude, hold on. He's like, no, he just follows me around all day, watches me work. He's my shadow. It's like, yeah, be a little careful with that. But I hear what you're saying. When you anything you say in that accent is immediately like, oh, he's going to say something violently racist. Because that's just what we associate with in our minds.
Yeah.
I mean, why would we actually feel that way? I don't know.
Generational trauma. It embeds itself when you say it automatically.
Yeah.
So we have Act 1. We get like a flute playing or whatever, and then there's an old truck that's getting pulled out of a river. It's raining as well. And then a dam is revealed. Yeah, it's pretty cool looking dams.
Yeah, it was actually.
And then we get titles: Fried Green Tomatoes and like cursive. It's based on the book that's called Fried Green Tomatoes from was it the Whistle Stop Cafe?
Fried Green Tomatoes at the Whistle Stop Cafe.
Yeah. Which in an Internet database they list that as the title, but as the movie I've only ever seen it as Fried Green Tomatoes. So I don't know.
In Europe, it was actually titled that way.
Oh, okay. I guess that probably brings it more folksy. It's like you put that whole title, and then the Europeans like, yes, now we get to experience American culture.
This is American culture at its finest. Look at these people. They're culinary. They put tomatoes in lard and fry them. This is why they all die at 35. But they're all happy. The woman, she got the cancer. It was from all the fried food, you know. It's just like having, you know, it's like, yeah, some...
yeah, it's like the South is to like, you know, it's like, you know, like we want to like go to Germany and like, hey, where's all the atrocious crimes you committed? We want to see that stuff. And I bet like the Europeans were like, hey, where's all the like racist trauma of the South? We want to watch that stuff.
Yeah, that's always seems weird when people like go to Germany and want to see that. Like, because if I went to Germany, it's like, oh, I want to, because it's my world. It's like I want to see your car plants and stuff. I want to, like, see where the giant Volkswagen plants are. And it's like they'd probably have to ask me. It's like, well, what is it? What about the Holocaust? It's like, well, I don't want to know about that. I don't want to come into your house and be like, hey, tell me the most embarrassing thing that ever happened in family history. It's like, I don't want to. We were all taught all about that in school because for once, like, America wasn't on the bad side of that. We always like beat that drum, like, look at the Nazis. It's like, well, yeah, let's ignore the other 400 years of our history. But yeah, that's always weird when people want to see the like, I want to see the worst thing in your country. It's like, why? Why do you want to do that?
I guess like probably the most next interesting thing would be just like the East and West Germany stuff. Do you think there's got to be museums of that and stuff? Isn't
Now,
there?
that would be cool. I would actually enjoy learning about that.
Yeah, because that's less couched in just the horror of war. It's just like,
Yeah, and that was the weirdest Cold War because it was like East Germany, technically like a vassal state of Soviet Union, but it was German, so it was actually efficient and fairly well ran, unlike the rest of the Soviet Union. Because I remember when the Chernobyl reactor blew up, like the East German, like there was a lot of East German nuclear scientists, and they're like, "Yeah, we're not going there." It's like, "No, you must go. The state needs you to go there." And it's like, "No, do you know what kind of radiation has been released? Do you know how unsafe those reactors are?" Like, the East Germans knew all this. They're like, "Yeah, we're not going. You can just shoot us. You might as well shoot us now because it's like we're gonna die going there." So they were like, "Oh, the Germans aren't cooperating," But I don't know what that has to do with fried green tomatoes, but yeah, that's.
Oh, I'm just saying. I wonder if Europeans like to watch things from the South because they wanted to see like a cider lowest or whatever.
Oh yeah, probably. Well, see, that's one thing. Like, they don't understand the breadth and scope of America, because I have talked to people and had to explain, because they do think, like, because there's a lot of stuff that, like, the South is like unique part of America. They have different food and all kinds. It's different climate. And they think like that's generically like American culture. It's like, no, that's just one region of America. Like, because they don't understand, like, yeah, this is like 4 countries operating.
Yeah.
And they don't get that. Because I know there's this YouTube channel I watch about this guy who moved here from the UK, and it's like things about America that are weird and unique. And he always says, he's like, people don't understand the scope and size of America. It's like, it is massive. It is ungodly huge. And they literally have, like, in every town there's a store. Every town above 10,000, which you said there's a lot of towns in America with more than 10,000 people, you can buy all the components you need to build a home from scratch. It's like, that does not exist in, like, whatever England he's from. He's like, that's crazy to me. And he lives near a freeway, and he's like, I see these giant, well, you call them tractor trailers. I call them lorries over there. I see these running day and night, constantly, just full of tons and tons of supplies. He goes, that is crazy to someone who's not from here. It's like, where are all these supplies going? It's like, oh, this is why you can literally build a house in any town over 10,000 people yourself, because that's where all these supplies are going to. Because he has a thing about houses too. He's like, I can't believe how huge your houses are and how complex they are to maintain. Because he lives in a 4-season climate area, so it's like, oh, I've got to have this and that and this, and he had a 10-gallon water heater in his house in England, and that was it. Like, there was no heat, there was no air conditioning, there was, no, not in America. Everything's like this intensive, infrastructure system. And so yeah, a lot of people don't understand our country that aren't from here. Because to us, it's normal. It's like, yeah, of course, get out the wrenches, time to fix stuff. People from there are like, what are you doing? It's like, no, you got to fix this.
We're going to go see a concert. It's like, is that like down the block? It's like, no, it's a 3-hour drive to Texas.
Yeah.
And we don't bat an eye at it.
Yeah. That's what that kid from Norway that was friends with Grayson said. He's like, this town has the town where Grayson went to high school. He's like, this town has 5,000 people in it. You have more stuff in this town than I did in the city I lived in and the 4 cities surrounding me. He goes, how is every town in America like this? And he goes to like Ann Arbor or something. He's like, oh my God, this is massive. It's like, oh, this isn't even a mid-cap city, dude. Like, this isn't big. There's only one big city in Michigan. There's just a lot of people spread out and also the suburbs fascinated him. because he thought that's like the cities. It's like, oh, your cities go on forever. It's like, no, those are separate cities. They're not like, that's not all Detroit, because he thought Detroit went from like Canada to like the middle of the state, and it's like, no, those are separate cities. It's like that's not all contiguous Detroit. As a matter of fact, the reason all these cities exist are because, you know, Detroit kind of collapsed at one point and everyone just fanned out. But yeah, it's always interesting. People from Europe are just fascinated by the size of this. And then you talk to people from Russia and it's like, oh yeah, we had to drive 3 days to do something. It's like, wow, that's a little nuts. That's crazy. But then you realize they don't really have freeways that run the breadth of the country like we do. It's like, no, we had to drive like on roads where we had to get planks of wood off the top of the vehicle because they were mud holes. It's like, oh my God, you're like going across the country the Grapes of Wrath way.
We got credits with shots of like train tracks from a moving train. Like we don't see the train. Then we cut to, there's Ed Couch, who's making a phone call from a phone booth. So we're in modern times at this point. Or the present day, not modern times. 1991. So
most people might be baffled about, like, why doesn't he use Google Maps on his cell phone? What's that box he's standing in?
They don't even have MapQuest.
Yeah.
You gotta look at a map you got from a gas station and hope everything's listed on it. Make calls from the road. Like, let's take this route.
I remember doing stuff like that. I actually had to use maps
yeah.
for a long time. I remember, and then you'd print maps off MapQuest.
Yeah.
That went on for like through the 2000s.
Yeah. And then eventually then like GPSs came down from being ungodly expensive to being like, well, it's $300, but now I don't have to think about where I need to go.
Yeah.
And then just and then almost like 3 years later, every cell phone could do it.
Yeah, it was crazy when you realize, like, oh, this was in like the early 90s. It's like, you know, take a ride at Chickasee Fork. There'll be an old barn. It's painted green on your left. It's like, oh, okay. There's like no road, you know, signs or anything.
But yeah, generally, if you're going to a big enough city, there are just road signs on the highway they can follow, or it's just like, oh, this city in 120 miles. It's like, okay, well, I'm going the right way. Just keep going on this till it tells me to divert.
Yeah, because the nice thing about GPS is you can just keep taking them pills. And you don't have to think about anything. Right turn ahead.
So yeah, he's making a phone call on a phone booth in front of a dilapidated cafe, which this is the Whistling Stop Cafe. Or yeah, Whistling Stop, right?
Whistle Stop, yes.
Yeah, Whistle Stop Cafe. Then we have Evelyn Couch, played by Kathy Bates, who's like looking at the menu for the abandoned cafe, and then she eats a chocolate bar, which is a constant refrain throughout of like always having a treat, and she's eating her feelings away. It's less stated in this. I mean, it's only like in passing. It's more stated in the book about like, oh, they had kids. This is like kind of like a middle-aged couple, and the kids have moved out, and now they're kind of just like they don't know what to do with themselves, and so the marriage is like slightly falling apart. Here it's just like you only see them, you never see their kids, so you don't know what the hell's going on. Like it almost seems like they're like new to town, but they're just like going out to visit Ed's Aunt Vesta at the nursing home. There's
apparently angry at everyone, including God.
There's a train that goes by, but we never actually see it. We only hear it. And then Evelyn talks to Ed. Is like, did you hear that train go by? And I didn't hear anything, honey. So it's just like, this kind of like, what would you call it? Magical realism that's going on here.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a moment of like, oh, it's a moment of like quaint. It's like, there's magic in the air. Now, if it was David Lynch movie, like a tree would start vibrating out of it. They kind of magical realism.
Yeah. They slightly argue about being lost. So yeah, they're meant to go visit
Well,
Ed's
it's her
aunt.
fault, of course. Like, well, why
Yeah,
didn't you tell me turn left back there?
yeah.
Like, Ed, I don't even know where I am. Who are you?
This
Shit.
Whistle Stop Cafe isn't on the menu. Isn't on the map. So they go to a nursing home. Aunt Vesta kicks Evelyn out of the room because they always bring something, and then the thing is always thrown out of the room, and then she is chased out of it. So
Yeah. And Ed's always, chiding her like, "Oh, Aunt Bess, don't be that way." And she's like just being really violent, and
yeah,
it's like, huh?
yeah. You don't see her or even hear her. It's just, it's just the
Yeah, you don't.
octopus.
She's not saying anything. Like, you turned away from God. There's like no reason for her anger. It's just like inarticulate. But I was asking my wife, and she said, "Oh yeah, people in old folks' homes are like that. They just get so randomly angry and emotionally upset because you're basically in a prison at that point." So
Yeah. So any
that
new
prison's called your body.
and any new stimuli is met with anger.
Yeah. Yeah, you're just like the face-eating monkeys. It's like, I don't like what's going on.
Then Evelyn goes to like the waiting room, or I don't know, like her kind of meeting area or something. It's like a big open area with couches.
Yeah.
Here's where Ninny Threadgood shows up. This is Jessica Tandy, and she just comes up talking about like her medical conditions without any prompting. It's like, they took my gallbladder. They took my gallstones. You want to see them? And she's like, no, I'm good.
I think it was like gallbladder. It's like they keep it in a jar at the hospital.
And then Evelyn just politely listens all the while, but she's just trying to eat a chocolate bar, so she doesn't really want to listen to her. But suddenly there's a murder mystery comes about out of nowhere, and she's like, wait, what are you talking about? Did I ever tell you about the murder of Frank Bennett? It's like, what the fuck did you just say?
Yeah. Suddenly it takes a turn. If I'm like, oh, I'm going to listen to this old person drone on about medical conditions, then a corpse is mentioned. Like, you tell.
So we get a flashback to Iggy Threadgood was arrested for the murder of Frank Bennett, and we cut back to like the truck being picked up out of the river. Then we get a further flashback about Buddy Threadgood. It's played by Chris O'Donnell. This is probably a good year for him because he was also in Sin of a Woman this year. And
oh, really? Okay.
I think what's the movie about Dead Poet Society? I'm not sure when that came out. That might have been around the same time. So this might have been like a heck of a year for Chris O'Donnell. Who's now on NCIS Los Angeles. I think they're wrapping it up. He got a good like 15 years out of that show or something.
Oh yeah. I was also in Batman Forever.
Same year?
Robin. No, that was 5, yeah.
Okay. I thought you said Best Man Forever. I'm like, what's that? Like, Batman Forever.
Also, The Three Musketeers was a height for his.
Oh, okay, yeah.
No, he actually won a Razzie for worst actor in that.
Okay.
That movie was a giant failure.
I don't remember it, so I guess, yeah. There's a weird, it seems like almost every, 10 years, there's just a new Three Musketeers movie.
Yeah, they keep, this was the one made by Disney. It had Charlie Sheen, if you can imagine that, Kiefer Sutherland and Chris O'Donnell.
Huh, okay.
And Oliver Platt and Tim Curry.
They're just trying to make Young Guns, but with Three Musketeers.
Essentially. They spent $30 million to make it. It made $111 million back. But it was like, oh yeah, it was nominated for all kinds of
Oh, okay.
We hate movies because of that kind of stuff.
Was that directed by this guy?
It was directed by Stephen Herrick.
Oh, okay. He must have produced it, I think.
Yeah, I think he probably did.
Yeah, let me just take a detour and see if he produced Three Musketeers.
Huh.
93, The Three Musketeers?
Yeah, I believe so.
Yep, he produced it.
Okay, well that makes sense.
So yeah, we got a further flashback with Buddy Threadgood. He's just kind of like this beloved member of the family. We kind of move into the house of the whole Threadgood house. We meet the whole family, which is kind of the only time we meet the family, and then they just kind of disappear for the rest of the movie, even though they still exist somewhere in the town or whatever.
Yeah.
So there's a wedding going on, and Iggy is kind of like the feral child who's being forced to wear a dress because she's the tomboy of here, and she's getting made fun of by her brother, I think. Or who's making fun of her? Is that like Clayton?
I don't know if that was her brother or a cousin.
Okay. Because there's like Ninny said she married like Clayton Threadgood, and I was wondering if like, oh, is that Clayton that was making fun of her?
Because I know, like, yeah, cause I don't know if that might be her younger brother. Because I know Buddy's her older brother.
Yeah.
So they're acting like siblings.
Yeah. I don't know. There's some things later on where it's like, is this what's going on? And then I looked up stuff, and they're like, no, that's not going on. That would be weird. And here's why. It's like, oh, I thought that was obvious that this is what's going on. I thought this was the M. Night Shyamalan twist. Apparently, there isn't one. And we'll get to that anyways. So yeah, she runs away, and then like you just see like the dress and like shoes falling from a tree house, and then Betty goes up to calm Iggy down by telling her a story about clams. You know, this is like the whole Southern like just tall tales that to calm people down. This one's about like people are special and different. You give a clam a piece of sand that turns into a pearl, and that God just makes it that way.
Yeah.
You're special, Iggy.
It's magical thinking mixed with mysticism.
Yeah. And Christianity. And then we cut to Iggy's like wearing like a yellow suit to the wedding. Here we have Richard Riley plays the Reverend, which I almost know him from Office Space. He's the leap to conclusion guy that gets like hit by a car when he's trying to kill himself.
Yeah. That guy's like, he's really young in this. He's been around in all kind. What's his name? Richard Ryle. Yeah.
Yes, I was guessing Riley. I don't know. It's Riehle. So yeah, Ryle or Riley. I'm not sure.
My favorite role he plays is what do I remember him? He was in Casino, and he's the guy who like does the investment stuff for the Joe Pesci character, Nicky Santoro. And like he's like the legitimate like investment money guy who's like does stuff for banks, and Nicky Santoro's like, yeah, hey, I want to do this and that, and he's like, oh, you can't do that, that's illegal. And Nicky's like, are you stupid or something? Do you know who I am? You knew who I was when you got into business with me. And he like tries to throw him out of the office or something, and like he comes back with a hammer, and he's like, I'll break your hands if you ever try this on me again. And he's like, I'm gonna call the police. He's like, go ahead, get a restraining order, and I'll walk right through that restraining order and knock your teeth in or something. He goes, you know why? Because I'm stupid. That's how I got where I am. It's a great speech, and this guy's playing like the straight guy, like it's like facing a wild animal. Because Joe Pesci was crazy at Casino. He was like the worst. He's like, you're gonna tell me? I got your head in a vice. You're gonna tell me what's going on? All right,
I've got to pop your goddamn eye out just to give up one name. You made me do that.
Best Joe Pesci ever.
I guess they do the same thing in Goodfellas, but it's like spoilers. It's the greatest thing where Joe Pesci is doing the voiceover and his character is killed while doing the voiceover. It's amazing.
Yeah, because they're like digging a hole in a field, and he's like, yeah, I don't know what's going on. They're gonna meet with these guys. He's like, oh, he must like live through this. And then he's like, his voiceover is like, oh, when he gets hit in the back of the head with a shovel. It's like, wow, that was let's see that coming. Yeah, I think in like what was the one before that? Goodfellas. It's like when he thought he was going to become a made guy.
Yeah.
It just kind of like it ends like, oh, it's the last thing he says is the voiceover. But yeah, in Casino he actually like yells out like yeah, it was great movie. Love that movie. Best title sequence intro ever. Robert De Niro flying through the air after the car bomb and just rolled. credits.
Yeah.
It was like a James Bond
yes.
intro.
Yeah,
really...
except but instead of a naked woman in silhouette flying through flames, it's Robert De Niro not in silhouette flying through flames. Which is also amazing because when you cut back to that scene, he doesn't even like get exploded. He just like the thing kind of malfunctioned. He just kind of gets away.
Oh no, it was some great car trivia because he's doing the voiceover and he's like, it turns out that year they put a big metal plate in as a heat shield from the transmission to the inside. So that's why the bomb didn't kill him, because he basically had a shrapnel shield under his seat because they put in a heat shield from the transmission. And of course, it's like, wait, is that true? Yeah, that's true. They did have a big heat shield under there because the transmission was getting so hot it was melting the carpet in the Cadillac. It's like, wow, somebody knew about that. And it's like, hey, yeah, that's why the bomb doesn't kill him. We can have like the best opening sequence in movie history. It's like James Bond, but for gangsters.
Old gangsters, middle-aged gangsters.
My wife hates that movie. Hates Casino because she's like, I can't believe like what these guys are doing. Like he's hitting him with a hammer, and one of the characters gets beat to death with a shovel and shot. And it's like, well, yeah, these are gangsters in the 70s. And this is like what ruined and made Las Vegas what it is today. Yeah, she hates that because it's like, oh, you get to know these characters, everyone gets killed, or they all have violent, like horrible lives, and it's like, well, yeah, it's not romantic how those people live.
You came to the correct conclusion. These aren't good people. You're not supposed to like them.
Yeah, these are criminals.
Well, why would I watch it? It's like, well, you want to watch their downfall. It's like, you see, they don't learn their lesson and they die. And then corporations came in and got all the money.
Yeah. They act like criminals too, but just a different kind because they can like change the laws. These guys can only break the laws.
Yeah. You don't have to kill people to get everyone's money. It's like,
no one gets
brilliant.
Killed. Everyone gets like bonuses. But no one gets their head put in a vice or anything.
We have Buddy courting Ruth Jameson, here played by Mary Louise Parker, which I most know her from Weeds. Is that the most famous thing she did? Or she have she's been in a bunch of things, but that's mostly what I know her for.
I know she does transcendental meditation with David Lynch. I know her from Red Dragon, like the 2002 Red Dragon.
Oh, okay.
She was the wife of the main guy.
We last saw her in Red Sparrow as like the corrupt senator.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
But there she has like a really weird bit part where it's like, why is she doing this movie? This seems like really beneath her. But
And she also did the one with Whoopi Goldberg and Drew Barrymore, Boys on the Side.
Huh.
It's about women going through breakups with their boyfriends and husbands and finding meaning in their lives. It's not bad. It's kind of cute.
Here they're all walking over the dam, which is really cool. Like, you just, because it seems like that's a lot of water. Like, wasn't that just going to knock you over and make you hit things? But they're just walking across it in their bare feet.
Yeah, I said when we were watching the movie, like, that looks unsafe, because what happens if you get swept off your feet? You just go over the side and break your neck. But it didn't. Well, that wasn't part of the story.
No.
There's other ways to die.
I mean, that's that's probably going to be a problem this whole podcast here, where it's just two men trying to find like the logical defaults of a movie that's more about emotions. Like, I didn't understand the emotions. I'm going to talk about the logical fallacies.
Yeah. I totally missed the point of this movie.
So Buddy and Ruth kiss, but like Ruth's hat like blows off, and then like so Buddy chases it down, and as he's chasing down, his foot gets stuck in the train tracks, and then a train shows up, of course.
Yeah.
It's a very tense scene because you get like the whole chugga of the chain coming and the train whistle, and you see him like trying to untie his shoe frantically, and you're like, if he gets his shoe untied, will he get away? And then he's basically killed off screen. You don't see it. You just know by the screams that he's dead. And then that's when Big George shows up. It's played by Stan Shaw. Like, look at his like his most known roles. Like I don't know them, but you know this guy from something.
Well, this guy's in everything.
Yeah, he's in lots of things.
A lot of stuff.
Like he almost looks like he could be like the brother of Keith David. I don't know, they have a similar face structure. I don't know how to describe it. He's not he doesn't look exactly like Keith David, but he's like something like similar.
Yeah.
And also he's just a big dude, so and a great actor, so so yeah, Big George grabs Iggy. He's basically, and he becomes like the only one that she'll respond to. Like she's the only one that will like, he's the only one that she'll let in.
Yeah, she's basically been traumatized to the point of like, that I don't even want to talk to anyone anymore.
Yeah.
Because my favorite older brother died.
Yeah, this is completely
in front of me, just like killed by a train, which isn't like a clean death.
I mean, it's implied he like made a leap and then maybe got winged by the train and it just, but you never know. Or also just ground up in the wheels. You never know. It's up to your imagination how horrifying the death was.
Well, I mean, it must have been bad because Big George just like grabs her and he's like, no.
Yeah,
no.
don't look. And
yeah, so he's like walking her away. So,
which like implies a lot of tragedy for him. He's like, yeah, this is normal to me because this is what happens to my family. You don't need to see this.
Yeah, you don't need to carry this burden. I'm Big George. I can carry the weight.
Then we cut to the funeral for Buddy. Then we have scenes of like Iggy being alone by the river and at night, and it's like Big George the only one that she'll let take care of her. So I have that being the end of Act 1. So we have Act 2, cut back to the nursing home, and Ed comes in to get Evelyn, and and Evelyn's crying over the story of Buddy. And then we cut from there to Evelyn's like taking like a marriage counseling sex seminar or something, like women's lib sexual revolution stuff. I'm not sure. I don't know. Do you think this is around the height of like Dr. Ruth? Do you think that's right?
Oh no, that would have like Apex 10 years before this. That would have been more 80s thing. Okay. Now I don't know when the book was written now. So
I mean, the book takes place in 86, so I think it was written around 86 or something like that.
Yeah, so it would probably trace its origins to that in the book. Yeah, there's a lot of women's empowerment type stuff. A lot of like, yeah, it's time to explore your sexuality.
And Fanny Flagg here, the author of the book, she plays the teacher, so that's her cameo.
Oh, okay. Wondered why. It's like, who is this? Who is this? In this big movie. It's like, I don't recognize her.
And then she has a friend. I forget. I didn't write it down. I remember I think she plays. I most know her as playing like Patty Mayonnaise in Doug, the cartoon series. Which she has a very distinctive voice.
Yeah.
She's like talking about like wrapping yourself in saran wrap to like charm your husband or whatever, and so it cuts to a dream sequence of Evelyn doing this, and then she's like trying to be sexy, and then Ed just comes in and goes like good Lord, Evelyn, like people can see you, and then just like rushes her to a bedroom and like doesn't even like get horny at all. But then it cuts back, it's like, oh, that's just a dream sequence. That didn't actually happen, which I believe in the book it just actually happens. And it's just kind of like an offhand mention of it.
Yeah, it just shows kind of like, where she's at in her life.
Yeah.
And because it's like her husband's not a bad guy, but he's just kind of in his own world.
Yeah. He's not trying.
No.
and he doesn't realize that she is, which is the whole, like, they're just miscommunicating here. So.
Yeah, he's just kind of on autopilot, and he's like, well, I'm just, I don't know what. Like I said, you don't know much about their children, so it's like, oh, okay. They're just like an old married couple at this point.
Well, but it's also just a guy thing where it's like these aren't even subtle hints; these are direct hints. Like, hey, this is what I'm doing, and then he's just not getting it. It's like, no, honey, you need to directly tell me exactly what. Honey, you need to tell me, like, we're going to have sex now. Then I'll respond to that. I don't know why you're wrapping yourself in saran wrap. I don't know what that means.
Is this like a thing for your skin? Ed, what do you know about things? I know like sports statistics. That was the only thing me and my dad could talk about. You know, that was when he wasn't hitting me and we were talking about sports. That's all
So I doubled down on that for the rest of my life.
I mean, we don't know that about this character, but I know people that grew up like that. So I'm just
Yeah.
assuming it's some form of that. Like, okay.
We cut back from the dream sequence. And then we cut to Evelyn's at home. She's trying to make a nice night for Ed, but Ed's just interested in food, beer, and baseball. And really, it's just sports in general for the rest of the movie, because that's kind of her big argument, is like all he wants to do is watch sports. Because like depending on the season, it's like it's football, basketball, or baseball. But he seems to be really into baseball. Because at some point he has a baseball uniform, which implies he's like some sort of like little league coach or something. I don't know. I don't know what he does.
Yeah. He probably has. It's like, it seems like an insurance. He has the body type of an insurance sales level, like insurance, like a regional insurance guy.
Yeah.
Like one of those jobs. It just made. I remember, like I said, me and my wife were watching this yesterday. I was like, I'm not that like blind to things going on, am I? Because if she showed up at the door with booze and stuff for me, I'd know immediately, like, oh, something's up. And he's just like, oh, thank you, good Lord, now I can go watch the game in front of the TV. I guess it's probably, I'm not into sports. It's like you'd be like, oh, they have a new documentary on about this, I'm gonna go watch it.
I mean, he's not completely like ignoring her. He's like, thanks, honey, I really enjoy this, but he wants to get that sports. Like, he really likes the beer and food, but he's got to get to the sports.
Yeah.
And he even like thanks her for it and like, hey, this food's really good. So there's that. But once all that is collected, then, you know, she doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah.
Then we're back to visiting Aunt Vesta. Here it's like Halloween time, so they bring candy, and of course the Halloween candy pumpkin is thrown through the room.
Yeah.
So she's kicked out again. Here Ninny shows up again, but she's like kind of making it seem like Evelyn came there intentionally to see her, even though that's not the case. But you don't know if like Ninny is like manipulating that, like, oh, thanks for coming to see me, or if she just believes that because she needs to. You don't know, because either way it's sad. Because the reality of it is, after the first meeting, Evelyn would never come back to this place. There's no reason for it. It's like, well, she's just gonna throw stuff at me again, so I'm not going next time. So the reality is that she would never see Ninny again. She would never worry about this story being unfinished. But for the Deus Ex Machina of the movie, they have to meet each other again. So, and so then he starts telling the story of the Whistle Stop Cafe. Iggy still can't get over the loss of Buddy. She leaves Honey at the grave. Iggy's now played by Mary Stuart Matherson. What was I going to say about this? I can't remember. Oh yeah, so yeah, I mean, that's always kind of the cruel thing about this character. It's like, come on, it's been like a decade. You still can't get over the death of your brother.
Yeah.
It's like, how bad at you? Like, you can't complete the what's that cycle? The
grief cycle.
Grief cycle.
Are you still in the denial phase? What I mean, you live in the American South in the 30s. You're literally surrounded by horror. I mean, you can find any reason to feel better about your life at this point. You're living in Alabama and like in the Middle Ages, essentially.
Then Iggy crosses Frank Bennett, who she will be accused of murdering, and he just seems like a complete asshole.
Yeah.
I didn't write down the actor's name, but the actor is like basically born to play Southern asshole. It's like, oh yeah, this guy is always doing bad things, plays like a bad lawyer, is always a racist and stuff, but he's really good at doing it. So,
oh, Nick Searcy is his name. Yeah, he's from South or North Carolina. So.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so the more sophisticated South.
Yeah.
Ruth goes to. Ruth is in town, and basically Iggy's mom basically like told her to come back to town to try to like help out Iggy, like befriend her for the summer and like help her out. Um, and so Ruth goes to some gambling shack where like all the criminals in the town hang out at. And so she chases Iggy out of there. Which I don't know, would gambling be illegal at this time? Like, I don't know. I presume.
Yeah.
So.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Especially down the Bible Belt.
We also have a scene where Iggy drives by the church and makes fun of the Reverend, which is kind of funny. And he's just like, see, you're surrounded by evil and it's going to come for you.
Yes, these are the churches in the South where it's like, well, the Bible is essentially the book of Leviticus. It's like, well, wait a minute. There's a lot more to it than that. No, but this is all the stuff that's bad and how you must be killed. And it's like, great. Just, the Southern, like the Levitical law churches.
Then we cut to Ruth is trying to hang out with Iggy, and she takes Ruth along for some illegal hijinks. They break into a parked train where Iggy's like looking for stuff to steal. The train starts moving, and then Iggy starts throwing food off the train to like people in need because they're just like hobo.
Yeah, this is during the Depression.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And so I mean, this is a great turn for the character because like again, it's like, why can't you get over his death? And then you see like, yeah, she's not coping with it well, but now she's like this Robin Hood where she's robbing from the rich and giving to the poor. It's like, oh, she does have a moralistic good side. And it's like, why does she?
Or she's a communist.
Because it's like, why is she like butted up against the church as well? It's because like, no, like the criminals she hangs out with are
communist.
The criminals she hangs out with are honest, even though they're dishonest people. And all the people at church that are supposed to be honest, they're dishonest because they don't actually believe in the stuff. They just know they need to put up airs. And it's like, see, I go to church. I filled out the box.
Oh, the biggest sinners are always in the pew. That's actually not even I used to think that was like a trope, like some kind of, what do you call that? Where it's like this well-trod concept that's actually not true. What do they call that? Damn it. It's like a, those apocryphal message. No, that's not it.
Oh, not a trope?
Or it's like a stereotype, but it's like, it's a stereotype of like, the most like devout Christians are the worst sinners.
Yeah.
Almost like this terrible stereotype. And I was like, well, that's really not true. That's just people wanting to say bad things. And then you grow up and you meet people and you learn about life and you're like, no, that's actually usually 90% true. It's like the biggest self-righteous people are like doing the worst stuff.
Yeah.
It's like you're going to learn more about real morals from the town drunk than you will like the finger pointing sanctimonious people who are doing horrible stuff behind closed doors. And it's like, oh, that's actually true. And that's horrible and satisfying at the same
time. Ruth complains at first, but then she gets a rush of like giving to the needy because they even like have shots of just like children with like, stuffed teddy bears that are falling apart. And it's like, well, you got to give the can of peaches to the dirty child with a half a bear in her hand.
Which I pointed out, like, OSHA wouldn't be for this. It's like, we're going to throw, 5-pound cans of food off a moving train. It's like, you're going to kill these people.
Then we get like moments later and it's time to jump from the train, which is basically Iggy dares her to, and so Ruth quickly gathers the courage to try to like convince her, and so she jumps first, and then Iggy jumps next and like rolls an ankle or something, but Ruth isn't hurt, and so yeah, presumably like she drags her like 2 miles to a nearest doctor. And then we cut to like sometime later. I don't know if it's the next day or if this is just like, a month or a week later, because now she's fine. She's like climbing the house to wake up Ruth to go on a honey gathering adventure.
Because this is like, well, the first time, like, so the first time since they know each other, like Iggy and Ruth like change roles. It's like for once Ruth is like, oh, well, we've got to walk you to the doctors because, you have to depend on me now. You're not always taking the lead.
Yeah.
And that seems to become a thing in their relationship where it's like how their relationship builds in this movie is cool. It's like totally believable. And I like, it's like, it is low key. It's like not in your face. Like they're not just making out or something, which is like, that's fine, but it's not really, wouldn't be like what I would want out of this movie. So Yeah, that was an interesting, like, they really did a good job filming and telling that story.
Yeah. I mean, I guess for a wider audience, but some people just want them fully going at it. It's like,
Yeah, no, I don't.
I need to know it's not ambiguous. They're just lesbians. Like, why make it ambiguous? But,
You could make movies without sex, and I would be perfectly
yeah.
fine. One of the reasons I'm a big fan of like Dune and stuff is like, well, there's sex in there, but it's like it's hardly spoken about, or it's just in a cutscene. It's like I
Yeah.
don't need to know. I want to know like more of the weird stuff that's going to happen. I know what sex is. It's like okay, but yeah.
Well, I mean, stuff like this, I like. I don't know. I was just like in my own imaginations, like, well, they're having sex in the meantime, but then they constantly bring up, it's like, oh, we're just friends. It's like, well, obviously they are having sex in the in the off screen moments, so yeah, they have to bring that up constantly. But yeah,
Mhm.
I don't know. I don't know, what the climate that this came out in, like what they could actually like do, or but like it seemed to be like the director balked at it because in the book it's just kind of like, I mean, there's no sex scenes in the book, but it's just more implied, like just everybody knows, like, oh, they're a couple.
Yeah, well, it's called the decency of a private life, which I actually appreciate,
Yeah.
which doesn't exist nowadays. It's like, can you just be private about whatever you're doing? Because at the end of the day, I mean, unless you're like hot, like no one wants to hear about the sex. No one wants to hear like Nathan talk for 2 hours about having sex. No one wants to visualize that. And with most people, you don't. So why don't we just not like? Okay, we know what's going on, but what's really important is like the moments that make up their life. Which
Yeah.
again, this is from 1991. Something that's totally missed nowadays. It's like no, it has to be just this in your face, like
Well, I
you
mean,
know.
this is a PG-13 movie, so it's not really gonna. That's not really the point of it. We have plenty of R movies. I mean, this same year, Basic Instinct came out. Like, if you want that stuff, it's there.
Which was like cool. Now that was cool. That's what I expected from that movie. Exactly what I wanted. That was Basic Instinct. I didn't want that here. I wanted a folksy, whimsical tale.
Yeah. So yeah, they have like a picnic under a tree, and then there's a giant beehive at like a dead tree that's nearby. And Iggy just pulls honey straight out of the beehive, which
This was nuts, by the way. The real story about this was nuts.
Yeah, the real actor actually did it because I guess the stunt actor got too scared and quit.
And I don't blame her. Like, hey, we want you to stick your arm in a beehive. It's like, how about if you light me on fire instead? Like, I would rather do that because at least there's some like safety stuff I can do with that. There's no way to safely stick your arm in a beehive.
I don't know, like there's a bunch of YouTube videos where just people just do it, and apparently it's just about remaining calm and moving slowly. But it's like I've had so many bee stings in my life. There's no way you can just go up and touch 1,000 bees and everything's gonna be fine. But some people
I
know how to
I
do
don't
it.
have that in me, and I'm not allergic. I've been stung by bees around that. I usually get stung like once a year. Now it hurts for like a second, but I don't like swell up like a basketball either. I'm just like, oh, this sucks. Get away. And as a matter of fact, I had something bite me the other day, but I just don't like it. And I would never be like, I'm going to volunteer for hundreds of these snakes by sticking my arm in a beehive. But in order to continue, the show must go on, as they say. So
What?
Mary Stuart Masterson, like, yeah, I'll stick my arm in that real beehive in a tree. Now I think the thing was set in there, but it's
Yeah.
like, wow, that's nuts.
Yeah, real bees though.
Real bees.
Which I guess later on in life she got back into beekeeping. She said she felt like a fraud for not doing it for so long. It's like, I did that thing like 30 years ago. I should be doing it again.
Yeah, this is my identity now. The bee woman. Bee charmer.
Yeah.
That's what she's called. Bee charmer.
Ruth is scared by Iggy putting herself in danger, but she's also still impressed by it. So
yeah.
Then we cut to a
I was
surprise.
most impressed when she was covered with bees and then walked back to Ruth and had no bees on her. I was like, that's like bee repellent clothing. Because they just be chilling,
Well, I also was like, I was looking at the jar they put the honey in. It was like, there's got to be a bee trapped in there, but I just handed it on.
No.
I always like when people talk about like, it's like honey is the most. We only know that we know honey is the most tasty of bug vomit. So, but I don't think we've tried enough to know if there's others.
Yeah, well, what if like mantises, like it was like, oh, this is the nectar of the gods. We just don't know about it. Hey, I used to buy honey. I used to buy honey. Stacy worked with these people from like what is it? Eastern Europe, Romania. She used to work for with these people from Romania, and like their dad, like they just had beehives behind their house in the country, and you could buy a big jar of straight from the hive honey for like $15, and I always got one. And it's like, and it had legs and stuff in it, but it was like, this is good. I don't care. I'm expecting that.
Yeah.
Because it's not boiled and passed through a filter. It's like, yeah, this is raw honey. I don't do honey anymore, but I used to. I love like real honey. Mostly you don't get it anymore. And if you get the real stuff, it's going to have legs in it. That's just the way it works.
It's fine. Small legs.
It's larvae, legs, whatever, If you put chunky peanut butter on big bread, put that honey on it, like you're not going to know you're eating the legs. It's chunky peanut butter. I can't eat any of that stuff anymore. Life sucks.
Well, there's a trick of like sometimes. I don't know if I know people do this. I tried it one time. And I don't know if it worked or it's just like I got over it. But there's a trick with allergy seasons where if you get local honey, like you'll cope better with the allergy season if you eat local honey because it's made out of the local pollens.
I could actually see that being a real thing.
So I know that as like a trick. I don't know if it's real or it's just something that's just gone this far.
It's probably real because the honey I used to buy from people, like it was red. It wasn't like yellow. It was red. It was because it wasn't pasteurized or boiled or anything. Just like they just turned a tap and it came right out of the hive.
But yeah, you can also like there's a lot of bug stuff in the South where it's like if you want to order bugs, you get them from the South because you can order crickets and they come from the South and you can make roast your own crickets and make protein bars out of them and stuff. And the other things where you get from the South is queen bees because you can just construct your own hive.
Is that where those come from?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
They come in this little box that has like wax in it. And then like you put it in there and like when the bees come for the queen, at first they're going to try to kill the queen. But by the time they get through the wax, they'll have accepted the queen and that's the new hive.
Huh.
So yeah, that's how you build hives.
I know people that have beehives now just for their flower gardens. Like they don't even collect the honey.
Huh.
They just want their flower gardens like super pollinated. And they have these amazing like English gardens, but it's like, yeah, they keep 2 beehives back there and they just let them go through whatever their life cycle is back there, not even harvesting the honey. And it's just so their gardens always look cool. There's like 3 guys that do it in our neighborhood. I guess you're not supposed to because, the association and a bunch of lamos, but I wouldn't complain about a beehive unless I was covered with bees. Then I would be like, no, this isn't working anymore. But so far I haven't been covered with bees. So
then we cut to a surprise birthday party for Ruth at the Den of Sin, which is just what I call it. I actually don't know what the place is called.
It's the drinking place down by the river. Gotta remember, Prohibition was still in like full effect.
Oh right, yeah,
yeah.
And then also drunken baseball is played, and then we have moments later where like Iggy and Ruth are just like playing in the river. Ruth mentions here that like she's getting married like when the summer is over, which is to the like sadness of Iggy. And but then like Ruth says, this is the best birthday I've ever had. And then she kisses Iggy on the cheek and then just runs off in the river. And this is where basically you realize like, oh, this is a lesbian thing. It's also where Iggy realized that she loves Ruth. But they don't make a big deal out of it. That's all for you to read. Then we cut to there's a wedding between Ruth and Frank, but you just kind of see it at a distance because Iggy watches it from a distance. And then we cut
character perspective wedding. Yeah.
Which I think it's at their house that they're going to live in, which, that's stuff you used to do where you just had like a giant house and all your ceremonies were there.
Cool house. It was really in Valdosta, Georgia, right over the Alabama line.
Huh.
Curious. Town of 55,000, incorporated 1853.
Then we cut
7 years before the Civil War, if anyone curious.
Then we cut to present day, and it's like a sex affirmation class where everyone's supposed to look at their vagina for power.
Yeah, like at a mirror, basically put a mirror on the floor and stare at it.
It's like, all right, ladies, take your panties off and squat over the mirror. And then Evelyn's taken aback by this, and it's like, yeah, I'm not doing it.
Well, she wants to do it, but she says she's ashamed to admit. He's like, well, I'm wearing a girdle, which is like I don't know. You know what a girdle is?
Oh, is that kind of like brings basically
it's
the
like
fat in?
Yeah, it's like an undergarment, but it's attached. So she had to go like unattach all that, and everyone was like, because oh, she's fat, she's wearing a girdle. It's that kind of stuff.
Yeah,
that catty women's world stuff that I don't necessarily understand. Because if I'm going to wear a girdle or a corset, it's like, it's made of chainmail, swords and arrows from piercing me. It's like, I'd be happy to let people know. It's like, I'm wearing a corset of mail. Then they'd be like, oh, he's this weirdo again.
But I mean, this is like the biggest thing for Evelyn is like her feeling bad about herself and gaining weight, and that being a whole thing, which is something men generally don't have to deal with, but is a never-ending thing and full of bad feelings and self-consciousness for women at all times.
Yeah.
So again,
was the one thing that happens to everyone as they get older, unless you're just like a diet exercise junkie, and then it's like other problems. But it's like, so everyone gets fat and everyone judges you for being fat.
Yeah.
And as someone who's been fat almost all his life, and even still is, even though I'm less fat now, still fat, it's like for women it's like a horror. For me, it's like, oh, you're gonna start dying from the feet up. That's what I hear. But for women, it's like, oh, she really let herself go. She's just not in control of her life. And it's like, yeah, it's a horrible thing. It's a game they all play. Because then there's like the anorexics and the people with good metabolisms, like, well, she's just lazy, or she's just this, or she's just that. And it's women's weight issues. But now there's a whole spectrum of drugs that are coming out, like, well, this won't be a problem. In 5 years, we'll have to like, oh, look at her hair. It's going to be something with women. It's always else. Trust me. It's just like men, or like you have men that are just cocks that want to, always be alphas. There's women that always want to comment on other women's appearance. Like you could find the most beautiful woman in the world, and it's like, oh, well, look at that mole on her face, or whatever. It's like, oh yeah, this is stuff that chicks do. This is why, if women ever wonder why they don't really run the world, it's because you hate other women. So you can never team up. Like, men can hate each other, but they will shake hands and then like put their swords on the table of like, we have this larger goal we must accomplish. I do not like you. You do not like me. However, we must accomplish this goal. Women will never cross that line. They're like, no, my hatred of you is more important than our goals. So they always like try to blame the patriarchy or blame men for being chauvinist pigs, which they are. That is all true. But ultimately, it's women's hatred of women that always defeats them.
Yeah, and that's mostly true for our generation stuff. I don't know about the next generations of people. Maybe that's completely different. So who knows?
Things tend to return to a kind of center always. So it'll always be some form of that.
Yeah, well, it's just there's just the new generation of people that just have way different expectations and stuff. Because like I remember growing up, it's like it was still like, even like my generation, it's like, if you're a woman, you got to be pretty so you can get a husband. Or it seems like all the new generation is like, well, I got to get a job. It's like, what about the husband thing? It's like, what about it? I need to survive. I need a job.
Yeah, I can now make as much money as any dude I can marry. So.
And there's no dude like in my vicinity that's gonna make enough money to like we can both live on it. It's like, no, we both need jobs.
Yeah, I mean, that's what happened with like me and my wife. Like, she she conceivably could make as much or more money than I do. It's just, it was like, well, could one of us be home to raise our son? So that's like the thing we decided to do. But yeah, she could make as much money as me. It's just, there's no need to, because I mean, you can't, if you're both working like 80 hours a week, it's like, well, there's your life, so we decided not to do that. But yeah, now 30 years ago, it's like, no, that wouldn't have been the case. But yeah, now it's all kind of weirdly paralleled out.
Yeah.
Actually, it's like men now want to be like children forever. And so I'm seeing a lot of that, which, again, I play with toys, I build models and play video games and stuff too. But I'm also like, I can also like build a deck or fix a car if I need to. It's like some of these people are like, no, I just want to like play with stuffed toys and stuff. It's like, what are you doing, man? You're like 40. Yeah, so it's weird now.
Let's where am I? So yeah, we cut that thing. We cut to Ed comes home from coaching baseball or something, because this is when he's in his baseball uniform.
Yeah,
and
this guy looks like Babe Ruth, by the way.
Yeah,
in real life, and he's still alive, so it just proves that like fat people still live. Fat people live still in the South.
Then we cut to Evelyn goes to visit Ninny, who surprises Evelyn with purple dyed hair. So Evelyn here wants to hear more stories. Here, it's not Evelyn's not coming along to visit Aunt Vesta. She's just coming on her own accord, because it's basically where she's getting kind of like hanging out with Ninny is like where she feels good about herself, or just likes to have, this is her friend essentially. Like this is her only friend.
This is the empowerment that's actually working in her life.
Yeah.
Versus I'm going to stare at my genitals in a mirror on the floor and be my woman, hear me roar. It's like, no, hearing Ninny's stories are like empowering her also. It's like, oh yeah, women can do things under, in the 1930s South, it's like a way more oppressive environment than, the 90s. So, I'm loving this lady's stories, and, I'm finding purpose in my own life. And she also has Krispy Kreme donuts, which I didn't realize were a thing in the 90s. She has a big pack of Krispy Kreme donuts. I was like, oh, that was around then. Okay.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know when they started, but I think.
Well, I know Krispy Kreme back in my days of extreme obesity, were like the raspberry-filled Krispy Kremes. Like that was like a thing with me.
Yeah.
It's like, yep, we're getting some milk and having a 6-pack of those. And then goodbye, legs. Yeah.
There was also a weird, because, I think they have Krispy Kremes on the coast, but then, their distribution in the center, they got rid of in the Midwest, so there's just no Krispy Kremes in the Midwest anymore. Now they've, slightly come back, because they just, but you can only get, the glazed donuts or whatever. You can't get, the fresh baked stuff anymore.
Yeah, the actual, live Krispy Kreme thing, that closed down around here years ago.
Yeah,
but you can still get them at the grocery. You can still get the raspberry ones. I still walk by them sometimes. But I never do it because it caused too many problems.
We cut to the flashback to the dentist sin again. Here we have Grady begging for a dance with Iggy. It's like this is her, this is the person that courts her the most, but she'll never end up with.
Yeah.
Because that's not how she rolls, but she'll hang out with him. So,
well, yeah, he's ultimately not a bad guy. He's just kind of a buffoon. He ends up being the sheriff, but he's not. He's not
even when you first see him as a sheriff, it's implied he's hanging out with the KKK guys, but that's revealed later on that he kind of distanced himself from that. Not completely, but just enough to make him redeemable.
Well, I always thought the way I saw it was his relationship with the Klan in the South, which it's a big thing down there, was oh yeah, I'm not in the club, but I'm friends with the guys. So when crimes happen, it's well, I know who to go talk to.
Yeah,
it's kind of like the what's his name? One of my favorite actors, and I can't think of his name, in Mississippi Burning, not Willem Dafoe, but the other guy. It's not Ed Harris. Why am I drawing a blank on all these names? Damn it. I always do this.
Gene Hackman?
Yes, Gene Hackman. because like he grew up in the South in Mississippi burning. Like he had, you know, anecdotal stories that I'm not going to repeat about like why people join the Klan and why they feel the way they do. It's like, yeah, they're just a bunch of poor dumb Southerners that want to feel better than, well, I'm going to say a black person. And so it's like, yeah, you had to be close to those guys, because when like the crimes happened against black people, it's like, well, I know who to talk to, because these are the guys, obviously they're in their own little weird club about hating black people. So, you know, when I investigate these crimes, this is who I'm going to deal with. This was the same thing, not as explicitly stated in this movie, because this wasn't Mississippi burning. This was fried green tomatoes. But yeah, I felt like this guy was close with the Klan, so we knew like, oh, what's the tempo of, you know, the best way to head off a lynching is to know the guys that are going to commit a lynching and be like, hey, calm down. You know, let's not like just murder someone, you know, not only in vigilantism, but probably murder someone who didn't commit this crime.
Yeah.
It's you know, there's certain levels of vigilante. Is like if the guy does like rape your daughter or something, and it's like you want to get together a bunch of dudes and kill him, on one level I get that, but it's like, make sure that's actually the guy that did it, not the people you hate, that you just want to like, well, here's my chance to kill one of them. It's like, no, it was your cousin Earl that actually raped her. It's like, what do you want to like lynch him? No, we can't do that. He's a white man, he deserves to go to court. It's like, yeah, see, this is where your thinking is really weird on this stuff. It's like, he should be killed because he did this, not because, you know, oh, well, no, he deserves a day in court because he's white. It's like, no, kill all rapists.
It's a while later, and like a letter with an obituary for Ruth's mother comes in. There's also like a parable in it, which Iggy reads as like a cry for help from Ruth.
Yeah.
So
well, we forgot that Ruth showed up, or that Iggy showed up at Ruth's house like sometime after the wedding. And remember, Ruth wouldn't like, her right side would never face her until the end. And that's because she had this huge shiner.
Yeah.
Because for some reason, you know, Frank it's like, I'm going to hit a 90-pound woman. It's like, great, cool, you're a tough guy. But
oh yeah, I forgot the notes right here. Previously Iggy goes to visit Ruth, see how she is, and then like, and then she turns her face and sees she has the shiner on her right eye. And then Iggy puts together what happens, and then she wants to fight Frank immediately, but Ruth convinces her to leave, and so she does.
Yeah, this is where she threatens to kill Frank if
I believe that's just a moment later.
Oh, is okay. I thought this was,
she doesn't. You hear Frank. You hear him off in the distance. But
yeah, you're right. There's a later. Okay, yeah, screwed that up. Right.
But yeah, so we cut to like from getting the obituary. She goes to console Ruth because her mom died, and here Ruth is just solemnly sitting at the window going, "Mama died and I'm pregnant," and it's like said with such disdain. It's like everything's going wrong and nothing will ever be good again.
Yeah.
And then Frank comes in to Ruth, like they're starting to pack up Ruth's stuff to leave because Frank is an abusive husband. And then like when he sees Ruth leaving with he slaps Ruth, and then Iggy jumps on his back, and then Iggy just like throws her off into like the wall. And that's when like the white help guy comes in, and Big George too. But like the white guy's like, "Hey man, I don't know what Big George is gonna do." So it's actually the white guy threatening the other white guy. but Big George pulls out a knife.
Thing. It's like, oh, if a black man threatens you at this time in the South, like, oh, you can just go get a gun and kill him. But if a white guy like implies, like, yeah, violence might happen here, then it's like, oh, I can't just shoot this guy because then I have to go to court, obviously. So. Yeah, because Big George pulls out a knife and starts trimming his nails. Like it's a folding knife, but it's like a huge folding knife.
Yeah. So then Frank lets go of Ruth, then she takes like one step and he just kicks her down the stairs, like half a flight of stairs. She lands
pregnant woman.
Yeah.
And also like Iggy jumps on his back.
Yeah.
And this guy just like bashes her almost unconscious into the wall. Because he's laughing, though. Because this guy's like obviously like powerful. Like, oh, this guy's like twice as strong as any of these women, and that's the whole weird thing about hitting women. It's like, what are you proving? It's like you're literally like just genetically twice as strong as these people. It's like, oh, you're a tough guy. That always seemed weird to me. Always protect yourself. That's my thing. Like, hey, if someone comes at you like throwing punches, like always protect yourself, but never beat on people that are just like half your strength and size.
Yeah,
Like,
well, I mean, same reason that kids get beat up too. It's like, why don't you listen to me? It's like, I get to beat somebody and maybe they learn a lesson, but they don't. You just instill them with bad anxiety for the rest of their lives and inflict it on other people.
Yeah, it's never a good idea to like introduce violence into a child's life, but it's like, hey, no one's a perfect parent either. Sometimes it happens, but hitting your wife is like a really weird thing. It's like I never got, and that seems to be like a common trope too. It's like, oh well, always the guy who's the bad. Like he can't just be like emotionally abusive. It's like, no, he's got to be physically violent too. It's like, well, why did you marry this guy? He's obviously crazy. But back then, women didn't have choices. He's like, well, he was a courting me, so.
This is almost an arrangement. Yeah, it's basically an arranged marriage. It's like, well, we have to get married. We gotta bring the families together to grow the land of the family dynasty or whatever.
Yeah, we're protecting ourselves from the tax man.
But yeah, this is where he kicks her down the stairs. This is where Iggy says, if you ever touch her again, I'll kill you. So this is like, well, that's a threat on his life. So,
and the person who reports this later in the court thing is called his hired man said he heard that. And I was thinking to myself, I need a hired man. Hi, I'm Nathan, and this is my hired man. It's such an anachronistic term, but it sounds cool at the same time.
Which we never see. Like
we just see the guy driving the truck, but it's kind of like in a one frame.
Oh, okay.
We don't know who the hired man is, but he heard things,
and or unless that was the other white guy who maybe it's like, well, I'm an honest man, I have to say what I heard.
No, it was the guy in the truck with him.
Oh, okay.
You just see it quickly.
Okay. And then we cut to President Evelyn's at the grocery store. She meets the lady from group and like is scared by her because she's like saying masturbation too loud.
In the grocery store.
Yeah. I think
even in 2023, if someone came up to me and started talking to me about masturbation, I'd be like, well, okay, I gotta go. So it was like weird then and weird now.
And then there's kind of a foreshadowing thing, but a little bit before this, because she has like one of those National Enquirer magazines is like woman chops up husbands and sells body parts to aliens.
Yeah, it was those great like 80s National Enquirer headlines.
Or The Sun, wasn't that the other one where it's like Bat Boy lives or something?
Yeah, it was always something you saw at the grocery store. You're like, what? Is this real? It's like, no, of course not. It's like, but it's printed on paper. It must be true. It's like, no, that's called yellow journalism. It goes back to the the colonies of America, if you'd like to hear more about it.
Which that's how you had misunderstood things back in the 80s and 90s. It's just all these print magazines. You don't know what's real. And there's no way to confirm it. It's like, they can't put lies on magazine racks. Yeah. Why would they do that?
And you're like, wow, that's silly and anachronistic. And then you realize in 2023, it's like almost an official religion of just like stupid. It's like, I'm using an integrated, globally, set up computer network to find stupid shit to believe. It's like, wow, that's crazy. It's like we live in Star Trek in some ways, but then Alex Jones is still out there peddling his wares. Not only is he out there peddling his wares, but people are like receiving this message like, yes. It's like, that's really crazy. Like, because our computers are way better than the ones like on Star Trek in the 60s. Like, that's the future we always hoped for. Yeah. But yet we're still believing like complete horse shit. Like, realistically, like I believe, like I said, I love conspiracy theories. I read all that stuff, but I don't preach it to anyone as religion. I'm just like, well, this is it's almost like reading like sci-fi I used to like to read. Like, oh, I'm reading, Arthur C. Clarke or Ray Bradbury. Now I'm reading like Alex Jones and what he thinks about the global conspiracy to turn us all gay or whatever. It's like, to me, it's in the same level of like, oh, this is entertainment. But then I meet people, it's like, hey, did you read that the other day? It's like, yeah, I did. It's like the prose weren't that good, but the concept was interesting. It's like, what are you talking about? It's like, they're coming for our penises. Like, huh? Whoa, dude, this is all like made up. This is like for fun, right? Like, no, this is life or death here. You don't understand. It's like, oh, is this where I'm going to be told that my book learning is like, like erasing my common sense? Like that kind of argument again? Okay, cool.
Yeah, see, like in Star Trek, all the computers in the future just contribute to progress, whereas in reality, they can contribute to whatever you want to. It's whatever echo chamber you want to jump into.
Yeah, it's like the ability to like forge steel and make tools it changed humanity, just like the ability to like print, like the printing press like changed the world, but it didn't necessarily. It's like it's just technology. It does, it does what it does. It's the hands that wield it. It's the same thing all throughout history, from the printing press to the internet. It's like, no, it's whatever the hands that you think everyone's gonna they're gonna be their best person doing this stuff, but it's like, no, we're gonna follow the path of money and greed. And because, by the way, none of that conspiracy stuff, folks, is based on like a sincere concern about anything. It's all a way to sell you supplements or something.
Buy my bone marrow.
Yeah.
Not literally my bone marrow, but my bone marrow of animals I'm selling you.
That'll be the next thing with like the giant podcast things will sell you stuff made from their like DNA. That'll be the ultimate, like, what do you call that? Like the meta god transformation. Like they go from being like a guy who talks really fast on the internet to like a prophet of some kind. It's like, drink my blood, cloned blood. That'll be the next weirdness I could see coming along. And then people will break into factions like, it's like I'm Joe Rogan's bone meal. I have taken Joe Rogan into my body and he is me and I am him, and I will now follow him to the end of the world.
Yeah, when I followed Joe Rogan early on, when he was less of a menace and it was just fun, like I bought the Alpha Braid and stuff. It's like, oh man, I'm gonna have awesome dreams and I'm gonna think better. And it's all garbage and didn't work.
Yeah,
it's like, well, there went $40 because Joe Rogan had a funny, cool story about how this stuff might affect your dreams.
Yeah, I mean it's fun, but it's like, understand it's more like religion than reality. Religion is fun. Just not reality.
So yeah, Evelyn runs from the person from group when she's talking about masturbation in front of the cash register lady, and then she crosses some disgruntled youth who like just tells her to piss off, and then so she goes up to like and demands to know why he's being mean to her, and he just goes like, "Shut up, you fat hack."
Oh yeah, it's like it's horrible for the character.
Yeah.
For me, it's like, well, this is every interaction I have when I leave the house. But for her at the time, it was terrible.
Because, she just wants to know. It's like, what am I doing wrong to make everybody hate me? And it's like, well, you're doing nothing wrong other than existing, which is all people really need to hate you in the first place.
She's asking a lot of the same questions I asked for most of my life. Like, why is everyone randomly happy or angry or disappointed with me? I don't understand what's going on here. Why am I wrong? And then when I got into my mid 30s, I realized, well, I'm not really wrong, nor am I right. I'm just me, and everyone else they have a problem with me. And that's like, I'm going to have to accept that as reality, because I'm not one of those people that I have zero charisma. I mean, I do have a lot of charisma in a strange way, but I don't have a charisma where it's like, I'm going to win people to my side, because they're also running their own scam. And I'm just not fitting in with that program. So it's like, well, this is a me problem, but not really. It's a their problem, because I'm just not with whatever agenda they're a part of. I'm like hey, let's get worked up about the 30 years war guy. Everyone else is like, wants to talk about sports or the supplements they're trying to sell you. And they're like, yeah, this 30-year wars guy sucks, because I don't understand this dude. But I used to think that was my problem. Then I realized it's like, oh no, you're fine. Just everyone else kind of sucks.
Then we have Evelyn goes to Ninny to like unload about her emotional eating problems. And it's basically just where she figures out like, oh, you're going through menopause. Like that's what's going on. Because she's like, one candy bar isn't so bad. And she's like, yeah, but then it becomes 10 or 11. She's like, Jesus.
That's why you're so fat. He doesn't say that, but nowadays that's what would be said.
And then here Ninny talks about her child Albert, who was born with disabilities. She says, like, I had him till he was 30, then one day he went to sleep and never woke up, which is just, sad.
Yeah. There's a point in this movie where it starts playing with you emotionally, and this is where it really starts, when it sets in. It's like, oh, there's just going to be nothing but an ocean of sadness from this point on. Because this movie made me cry then and now. I'm not ashamed to admit I teared up last night watching this movie with my wife, because it's good at what it does.
Yeah, it's okay to be emotionally manipulated.
Yeah, it doesn't mean like I don't have masculine traits anymore because I cried during fried green tomatoes. I'm a human being.
Then we flash back to Ruth is giving birth to a baby boy, Buddy Jr. Here's where Ruth gets some money from her dad, and she starts up the Whistle Stop Cafe. There's some friction with them selling food to black people out the back of the cafe, because they have like picnic benches out front that's where all the black people are, and then all the white people are inside. This is more explained in the book, but here it's just kind of like set up. It's like, that's how it is. And they kind of have Grady comes by and he's just like talking about there's like friction in the town with them selling food to black people. And so Grady warns him about the KKK, and this is where it's like basically mentioned. It's like, well, I know those size 14s. Like, you think I can't tell your shoes with that sheet on?
Yeah.
And there's also where he's like, oh, he's like a local cop. I don't know. He's got a badge and a gun. That's just what he does.
Yeah, he's a Southern sheriff guy. Sheriff deputy, I guess.
And also, like, the previous time you see him, he's in the Den of Sin. So it's like, oh, one of the bad guys is now the guy running, has to keep law and order in the town. So it's just a fun transition for the character. Iggy helps a guy named Smokey. I think he's called Smokey Lonesome or something like that.
Yeah, he has a weird name. It's Lonesome is the one I remember the most, but he has like a nom de plume for that I don't remember.
He's got, at first I was like, oh, does he have like Parkinson's or something? But he's actually got the shakes from like alcohol withdrawal.
Yeah, those are the guys that if they don't drink every 6 hours, they start having like they look like they have Parkinson's disease. Yeah. That's what I'm trying not to become.
So Iggy gives him some whiskey, and it helps him out. You never see him eat again. He's like, I'm sorry, Miss Iggy, for spilling some food, and he's like, it's okay. And then there's like a shot at night where Ruth like comes into like the whatever shack they have set up for like kind of people passing through, and she gives him a blanket, and he thanks her.
Yeah, he is essentially a hobo in the classic sense of like, he kind of rides the rails and, does all that stuff. And go to Patton Oswalt has a whole like hobo section about the hobo code and the hobo life, and it's beautiful.
What's that thing called? Like a honey dipper, which is just basically just like a ladle for like your toilet pot or whatever.
Yeah, it's basically like a. Well, because I remember in my farming days, like the honey tank was all the hog and cattle feces that was gathered to be spread out over the, when the crops, that was called the honey tank. And it was just basically a giant tank you drug behind a tractor that sprayed fermented feces all over the farmland. I mean, that's why corn in America is like 12 feet high, because that and like the most modern farming techniques in the world, like the corn, what do they call that? Like the kind of corn we grow is like genetically engineered to be pest resistant, and it's also designed to just grow to these huge proportions. But it also like really leaches all the nutrients out of the topsoil. So therefore you have to spread fermented feces and you drive this thing and you're spreading all over the ground, and it smells, it's the worst smell you could ever imagine. Because Because imagine the worst dump you've ever taken, put in like a stainless steel vessel and aged in the hot summer sun for 3 months. That's what a honey tank is.
And then we cut to Iggy's like trying to cook fried green tomatoes, and she fails at it, so it turns into a playful food fight, which the director states as this is essentially you're supposed to read this as the sex scene for these characters.
Okay, that makes sense. I never thought of it that way, but now that you say it, makes sense.
He's like, this is where we get as close to the line as possible without going over. Grady threatens to arrest them, but he doesn't, even when they like spread cake batter on his face.
Yeah. This is the most like most forgiving soul, Southern sheriff guy you'll ever meet. A movie where it's like, well, that's just quirky and fun. I'm not going to beat the shit out of you. Okay.
Well, you thought for a moment it's like that's what's going to happen, but it's like no. Then we cut to meanwhile Frank is in town. He's like spying on Ruth, but he's especially paying attention to Big George because he's like, well, that's the person I got to get through first. And it's night. Are you gonna say something?
No, I'm going to do the recipe for fried green tomatoes, but I'm going to do it at the end of the show. So.
Oh, okay. Frank shows up with a KKK and torches. Frank wants to take the baby. Then we have Smokey shows up, like having Ruth's back. The KKK burn a cross and tie up Big George and like whip him. And this is where Iggy there's like the window breaks and Iggy finally notices like, oh, the whole KKK is out there whipping George. So she comes out to confront them. And here Grady goes out to like support her, where it seems like he's even going against his own ideals. Like he's like, well, I'm with you guys, but in this situation, I'm not with you guys.
Yeah.
And then they disperse, and then here Iggy meets up with Ruth, and she's holding Buddy, and like they're talking about Frank, and then it's like a double entendre because she says, I'm gonna put him down, meaning the baby, but also meaning Frank. Like, I'm gonna kill Frank. And then we cut to, there's like a talent show with the town, and there's like a cross-dressing Grady. And I would say that Iggy's cross-dressing, but she's just always wearing like guys' clothes anyway. So,
well, not only is this isn't a talent show, this is part of the church revival.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Yeah, which is like, okay, cool. Progressive revival for Alabama in 1933.
And then we cut to like a different place. Frank shows up with a shotgun looking for Buddy Jr. Big George comes and gets Iggy to go after Frank. Frank's running away with Buddy, and then Smokey intervenes. Frank hits him, and then he falls down, and then off screen somebody hits Frank in the head with like a shovel. And then that's the end of that scene, so we don't know who hit him. And then we cut to next day. Big George is chopping meat, which is like, oh, we just chopping up that guy that just got killed, which that's the implication.
Now, I'll be honest with you, I totally did not put that together. First time I saw this movie, it's like, oh, he's doing more of his cool barbecue stuff.
Yeah.
Because this is where barbecue becomes like this mysterious, because I do not understand barbecue. I don't have smokers. I don't know anything about it. So to me, barbecue is like, this is American French cuisine. Like there's an art to this and a science to it also, but it's like mysterious in ways I don't understand. So I've always been fascinated by it. Not to the point where I'm willing to spend $3,000 on a green egg smoker. Still fascinated with this whole concept of barbecue.
Oh yeah, there's crazy stuff where it's like, because different regions have different things. There's like, because we're most familiar, which is closest to us, is like Kansas City barbecue, which that's very like sweet barbecue stuff. But even got like KC Masterpiece, which isn't necessarily overly sweet. It's just a different kind of tangy sweet.
Yeah.
And then Texas barbecue is a whole different thing, where I think that's a lot of like dry rubs and stuff like that. And then you have like, is like Carolina barbecue. They have like it's like very vinegary. I think I can't remember. One of them has like it's very vinegary barbecue, where it's like more like mustard and vinegar than it is like sweet barbecue, which is
Yeah, I know what you're talking about. I don't know. I've never heard it called Carolina, but it probably is.
It's some one of the states in the South it's known for.
Yeah.
And then Florida has its own thing where it's like, oh, there's something like where it's something like where the word barbecue comes from is like from like pirates and stuff that were in like what are those called? Those ships called barbacoa ships, or what is barbacoa? Do you remember what?
Well, I know there was something called the Barbary Coast.
Okay, then yeah, like it. And it was like,
and that was like the Marines. What is their song? It has something to do with the Barbary pirates. What's the Marine Corps theme?
The hymn, or like from the from
the halls of Montezuma to the
shores of Tripoli.
Yeah, it was something. Yeah, those were all like the Barbary pirates. Like that's who the Marines, like the original U.S. Marines, just fighting off of ships. Like they would just land and kill all the Barbary pirates.
So yeah, so that must be where like because I heard of barbacoa ships, but you're talking Barbary Coast. Like that must be because it was about like thieves and stuff that would come together and like cook meat by like burying it in the sand and like building a fire underneath it and stuff like that. And it's like that's where you got that like low and slow cooking and stuff.
Oh yeah, the 200-degree cooking.
Yeah.
Which to me like seems to violate like meat cooking safety protocols. Like that's not hot enough to kill things. It's like going on over 24 hours. Like okay, maybe cumulatively that will kill everything.
Then there's a sheriff from Georgia shows up looking for Frank. He suspects foul play and he's been murdered. He eats a bunch of barbecue, which again, the implication is that they're feeding Sheriff Frank's body.
Yeah.
I mean, all you see is like pork ribs and stuff at the thing. So it's not like you see like a rack of like human ribs being cooked on the thing or anything like that.
This isn't Silence of the Lambs. For those expecting like, oh, I enjoyed his, liver with a side of fava beans. Like, no, that doesn't happen here. So.
Here we have the sheriff threatens Big George, where it's like, basically saying like, hey, we hang black people in Georgia just as fast as they do in Alabama. And he's like, oh, I know.
Yeah, they're not more backwards than us. We're just as backwards as they are. That actor, by the way, what's his name? Rainer Schein. It's a very German name. Like this guy's like the quintessential like Southern sheriff cop guy. Like he's played this. What was the last movie he was in? Because I think he died. Or he's really old now. But he was in like Lincoln. He was in what was the thing I really remember this guy from? Anyway, yeah, this guy's.
He was in Quick and the Dead.
Yeah, okay. He was, yeah.
Okay.
I remember he was in Lincoln and Quick and the Dead. I think he was in one of the Blair Witch movies as like a sheriff. Or no, he was the main.
Yeah. No, he's in Blair Witch 2, it says, so.
Blair Witch 2, okay. He was the main bad guy.
But yeah, he's in a lot of like movies that take place in the South, and also a lot of like Westerns, especially like the modern, like kind of like Unforgiven type Westerns. I'm not sure if he was in Unforgiven, but he's in a lot of that stuff.
Yeah. What was he? What's my other favorite Western beyond Unforgiven? I don't have it up in front of me. Like, remember it's like The Killing of Jesse James by the coward Robert. Yeah. That's one of the best Westerns ever filmed, by the way. Everyone should watch that. I know it's like people hate it, but it's actually really good. I don't know if he was
a fascinating movie. I don't see it on here, but
I actually quote things from that movie like to my wife. Like we watched it once, and I was he was bewitched with her quim, and just like horrible, like old fashioned terms for like sex with women, and I'll like repeat that.
But I mean, it's kind of a long, boring movie, but it's like a fascinating thing. It's like, this guy murdered this guy, and then he took like it on tour to like recreate the murder for the public. It's like, that is insane. It's like, this guy was as famous as John Wilkes Booth. It's like John Wilkes Booth and this guy and Lincoln are the most famous people in the world at this time.
Yeah, it was nuts. I love the movie because to me it was like, oh, this is internet stardom before the internet. It's like I'm this minor character who did this one thing around all these famous people, and it's it's actually my favorite Western. I own that on disc. I have a disc of that movie somewhere around here. Yeah, I was so excited when the one of the main actors in that like played like the main bad guy in the Sarah Connor Chronicles. That actor's in a lot of things now, but like, you know, his best acting was in the assassination of Jesse James by the coward Robert Ford.
Yeah.
So, oh yeah, this guy's amazing, but has nothing to do with this movie, but it's cool.
Well, it's like
this guy who plays the sheriff in this, I just looked, was not in that. So it doesn't matter, but
it's I mean, we'll get to that sometime. I don't know. It's just it's because I completely dismissed that movie. It's like, oh, it's just some kind of one of those westerns, historical westerns, which I'm never ever like up for. It's like you have to convince me, and then I started watching it, and it had such a way different energy and pace of any kind of those movies. It's like, this is weird. I gotta see what this is going.
Yeah, it's like if David Lynch decided to do a western where people sit around and tell stories. Like, when is the assassination of Jesse James gonna happen? Is this gonna be cool? It's like, no, we're just gonna talk about it a whole lot, and talk about it in like Shakespearean prose, but set in the American West, which is like, oh, that's totally cool for some reason. I don't know why.
And the whole assassination scene is just weird because it's like, go clean that smudge off that picture, and it's just and it just lingers on everything so long. It's like, this is super weird.
Yeah, the death of a human being is like boiled down to a chore. I don't know. That's my interpretation. Could be way off, but it's like, yeah, that's what this movie is. It's like, oh, we're gonna clean up this black stain that we don't want on this perfect tapestry of American history, which has always been bullshit, by the way. But it's like, it's amazing in its own way. But I could be looking way too deeply into that movie.
Full Verhoeven effect with that movie.
Oh yeah, because this is what I do. It's like, I'm desperate to find entertainment. Blade Runner is a phenomenal movie that's like a commentary on our whole society. It's like, or it's just boring sci-fi. No, it means something. Trust me, my whole teenage years were defined by this movie. It's like, yeah, because you're really shallow, Nathan. It's like, no, don't say it.
So the sheriff threatens Big George. Later that night, we have Ruth is thinking about leaving town to take pressure off of Iggy because she's convinced that she killed Frank. Basically, Ruth recounts like all her hardships throughout life and is like trying to like pray things away and that not working. But then she says like, if Frank ever takes Buddy, she'll kill him. She says she'll break his neck.
Yeah.
And then here's where Iggy admits to being complicit in Frank's murder, but just not saying the details. It's like, I have to spare you the details because it could put both of us in trouble.
Yeah. It's very, this is Iggy's like, how do I say it? What's another thing we always come back? Oh, Charlie Wilson's War. It's like, what's the guy's name? The main CIA.
Frank Vakatos.
Yeah, Gustav Rakatos.
Oh yeah.
It's a very Gustav Rakatos moment. It's like when he's dealing with Charlie Wilson. It's like, yeah, I could tell you about this, but then I'm going to implicate you in a crime, so I'm not going to tell you. But just know that, like, we're going to get this fucking shit done because that's how Rakatos speaks. It's like, we're going to fuck these guys because everything's a sexual metaphor with him. So this is like Iggy's like Gustav Rakatos CIA guy. Like, I could tell you about the killing, but then you're going to be implicated in the killing, so I'm not going to tell you about the killing. I don't know if anyone else would ever draw that connection.
Hey, we got two men watching a movie about the feelings of women. That's what you're going to get. Charlie Wilson's War connections.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm the worst, most misogynistic, racist CIA guy that ever existed. Is my go-to guy for fried green tomatoes.
Then we cut to present day, and Evelyn's like looking for a parking spot, and it gets stolen by some like young punk girls or something. And then Evelyn just rams their Beetle, and then she gives Iggy's war cry of Tawanda.
Yes.
And then the U's come back out and yell at her, and then she just looks at him because they say something like, because like, hey, I was waiting for that spot, and she's like, face it, old lady, we're younger and faster. And then they come back out, and then she's like, face it, girls, I'm older and got more insurance.
Yeah.
And then drives off.
Which actually, in real life, your insurance would not pay for a volitional act of destruction, because they're only insuring against accidental injury and damage. Oh, by the way, 1973 Volkswagen Super Beetle custom convertible, a car that today in 2023 would be worth over $100,000. She caves in the back of it with a 1986 Ford LTD, which car by today's standards would be, with low mileage, would be worth maybe $15,000. Crazy, because they made millions of those and they were shit. Bad engine in those, because I know this is what the people who watch Friday want to know a lot about. But yeah, she would have destroyed like what today would be like not quite as crazy a collectible as, say, like a convertible, what are those cars? Like Hemi Cuda,
Yeah.
where like the most expensive car ever destroyed in a movie was destroyed in a movie most people don't know about, which is Phantasm 3. Oh yeah, 1970 something Hemi Cuda is worth like millions of dollars today because they only made 11 of them. They destroyed one in a terrible horror movie, which a terrible and great horror movie made.
Yeah, a fun misplaced horror movie.
Yeah. Love all that Phantasm stuff. Don't know why. I do love it though.
I don't know. There's something about who's the guy that made that. He's got a fun name.
Yeah.
Oh, Don Coscarelli. There's something about Don
Coscarelli.
Coscarelli. I mean, he makes interesting movies. Like all over the place too. Like, he's the Beastmaster guy. He's the Phantasm guy. He's the Beastmaster guy. What was that? He was the Bubba Hotep guy.
Yes, Bubba Hotep. Love that. I don't know why, because I usually don't like dumb, stupid, like horror stuff, but I love his stuff. It's like, oh yeah. Probably because the tall man has the best lines, ever in a movie. And I use those lines at work all the time, and it totally blows past the younger people. It's like, oh God, this sucks. Is today's work over? And I'm like, no, it's not. Hold my hand up, like waiting for an orb to rise from it with blades. It doesn't happen, but I use that line a lot. Like, wow, this really sucks. Thank God today's over. It's like, no, it's not. Like cut scene, but that doesn't happen in real life. So totally lost on people. It's like, that old guy's weird. Yeah, I guess I'm that old guy now.
Also, they seemingly made the point of it because there's like a truck in front of the Beetle, but the Beetle has enough room that she could smash it a bunch and it doesn't touch the truck in front of it. Which I'd be like, well, that guy's innocent. You're smashing his truck, but it never hits that truck. So
no, it does actually hit that truck because I pointed that out with my wife.
It does? Okay.
Yeah, here's an innocent like me, just like parking his. What do I drive now? Oh, it's an Escape. It's called an Escape. It's all plastic on the front. It's all rounded plastic. It's like, yeah, that's going to cost a fortune if anyone hits the front of that thing. So it's like me parking my Escape at Kroger and going in, and some woman having a midlife crisis bashes in the the car of the two ladies. And it's like, oh, now I'm on the hook for, my deductible. I have old guy deductible now. So it's like $250. It's like, now I'm out $250 because this woman can't menstruate. It's not fair to me.
And then Evelyn goes to see Ninny to explain her excitement for standing up for herself, and then she goes on a tirade of explaining all her imaginative violence she's going to do. Kind of to the horror of Ninny. It's like, this isn't what I wanted to inspire in people.
Yeah, I wanted you to be like kind of empowered to like be yourself, but it's like not destroy thousands of dollars of profit.
Then we cut to Evelyn's bouncing on an exercise trampoline and making a low cholesterol meal, which is pretty much the problem with all of America, because why can't Americans lose weight? You just eat less. It's because all the information at that time was wrong and probably still is now. You just got to yes, calories in and calories out work, but it takes more effort, and they just didn't know how to lose weight. The food pyramid was garbage.
Yeah, I'm going to jump on a trampoline. Yeah, take it from someone who's lost 100 pounds in the last year and a half. It's like, no, you've got to like do you got to waste a lot of your life that could be spent building models, walking around your neighborhood like a psychopath to lose that weight.
Yeah, because when I was growing up, it's like, oh, you just eat less, and then you end up like not eating for half a day, and then you just eat everything at home. And it's like, yeah, you still consumed 4,000 calories. You just did it in like 3 hours of the day.
Well, what I've learned from my health journey, which is actually pretty pathetic, but I have had kind of a health journey at least recently, is like, oh, Americans consume 4 times the amount of protein they actually need to live. But because we like, I don't know. We say this is like, oh, this is a lower calorie option, or it has a lot of protein in it, but it doesn't have a lot of fat. It's like, oh, it's good for you. But it's like, no, you're eating like a bodybuilder when you're not doing like bodybuilder level of exercise.
Yeah. Olympic athletes can eat whatever they want because they're working out 8 hours a day. They can have chips. They can have ice cream. You can't, because you're not working out 8 hours a day. They literally burn like 40,000 calories in a day. You're not doing that.
Oh, I had a guy at work talk my ear off because, because now I've lost so much weight where like people at work are like, oh, did you have surgery? It's like, no, I didn't actually have surgery. I just like controlled what I ate and, try to exercise a little more. That's it. But I had a guy at work tell me, it's like, you can eat 3,600 calories a day if you just come work out with me. And it's like, well, that sounds cool, but I also realize I've had like 35 plus years of industrial labor. I'm not going to blow all my joints out simultaneously trying to bench press like 250 pounds, because it's like, that's all that's going to do is like cripple me at this point. I'm almost 50. It's like, I'm just happy to lose the weight. I don't need to work out. And like, no, you can eat all the burritos you want as long as you like jog and like bench press 250 pounds over and over and over again. Whatever he was suggesting to me, it's like, I'm not doing that. So yeah, it's weird.
Yeah, I mean, the thing I find with weight loss and all that stuff is that it's just there's no one cure all. Like it's always an individual thing. I mean, everything almost always comes back to calories and calorie out anyways, but you just have to find what works for you in your life. And because I find out I can get away with almost nothing. There's like basically if I have any sugar or bread, it's like I ate 8,000 calories. Like it's not coming off.
Yeah, you had a weight loss thing. You had a weight loss thing to join the Marines. I had a weight loss thing recently because, I don't want to like be dependent on a bunch of medicine that I don't believe is going to be around, because I also believe in like societal collapse.
So you're like on the Patton Oswalt thing where it's like, no, I can't take depression medication because what if the apocalypse happens and I don't have my depression medication?
Exactly. And I tried to articulate that to someone who was like, they were trying to put me on diabetes medication. I was like, no, let me just lose a bunch of weight. Oh, you won't do that. It's like, oh yeah, I will. Because I have a bunch of guns locked in a safe that says, I don't believe like society's going to be here in 10 years. I can actually do that. Oh, okay, Nathan. And then I show up and it's like, oh, you lost 100 pounds. That's crazy. It's like, only because I believe in like the Mad Max future versus where like I can take injectable drugs and have my blood sugar be normal. It's like, yeah, I don't believe in that. I'm just going to lose a bunch of weight. No, you won't. It's like, no, I will. Not because I care about my health, but because I'm crazy. So yeah, it becomes something like that. And then people are not like happy with that answer.
Yeah.
They're
They
like,
want
oh,
inspiration, and all you have for them is just like, no, the worst thing is going to happen, and I'm preparing for that.
no, yeah, like I'm driving the last of the V8 Interceptors like without having diabetes because I believe like, oh, the world's collapsing. And it's going to be me and my dog running around with like dinky doo, like dog food that we're going to fight over. Because I don't think like, what's the current poop du jour in losing weight? What's the medicine you can't find anymore that's for diabetes, but it also helps you lose weight? Ozempic. Yeah, I'm not willing to do Ozempic because I believe in the dinky doo like Mad Max future.
Yeah,
versus like,
Ozempic,
oh, I'm just going to take like Ozempic. Like, no, I'm not, because I don't think it's going to be here. Because I think the world's going to collapse. It's like, huh? You really believe that? You don't really believe that. You're just being a smart ass. Like, no, I really believe that. I believe that since I was 15, and it's like everything is proving me right around me.
Then we're cut back to the nursing home. Ninny's afraid that Evelyn might kill her husband because the last time she was there. But then Evelyn shows up and she wants to know like the rest of the Iggy story. It was also funny because she talks to the nurse and is like, I think she's going to kill her husband. And she's like, that's all right. She's thinking just like a normal wife. That's what everybody thinks. So we flash back to Smokey's back in town after going missing along with Frank at the same time because he just got out of town. So you don't necessarily know what that's about. And it's not really about anything.
Yeah, it's about being drunk on a train track somewhere. That's what it is.
He sees Buddy Jr. playing on the plane track, so even though some time has gone by, so now Buddy's a grown-up child. Ruth is outside the cafe, like teaching kids, like out the alphabet and stuff like that. Here's where Curtis Smoot, the Georgian sheriff, shows up as well. He just like shows up every month, like wanting to accuse Iggy of murder. Then you hear the children screaming Buddy as there's another train incident. And then we cut to a fake funeral for Buddy Jr.'s missing arm.
Yeah.
They really pull your strings here, where it's like, wait, they killed both buddies with the train? And it's like, oh, now they're having a funeral for his arm, which is pretty funny.
They're like playing taps for his arm.
Yeah. And then they cut to like a different scene where they're pulling Frank's truck and it's explained that there's excessive rain and end up revealing Frank's truck that they just pushed into the river or whatever. Grady comes by and grabs Iggy. He's like compelled to like arrest Big George and Iggy, but Grady tells Iggy that she can like leave town and he'll let her go and just let Big George take the fall, but Iggy refuses that.
Oh, well, let's talk about Buddy Jr. for a second because it does resonate in one way with reality because the actor who played that was named Grayson Frick, which is my son's name. It's like, oh, that's the first time I ever heard that name. And then you go into Grayson Frick and it's like, oh, he was a recruit at you remember this San Diego Marine Corps recruit depot.
Yeah.
And he broke his leg during a martial arts demonstration because he was trying to show the people at the Marine Corps how to do martial arts when he was being inducted in the Marine Corps, which is like a thing for you, but it's like weird. It's like, oh, yeah, someone named after my son.
So he break his leg as a recruit, or was he a teacher trying to show off?
No, he broke his leg as a recruit doing a demonstration because he was trying to be inducted into the Marine Corps.
Okay.
And unlike you, he failed because he broke his leg. He made it all the way through. So
Oh, he probably made it through eventually. You just get put on like a medical thing, and then you get thrown in a later rotation.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I don't know how that
Or maybe he got med sept, medical separation, and then they just give you full blown honors because you broke your leg and they can't fix you, and then you're basically like you do like 3 months in the Marine Corps, and now you're a full blown veteran with benefits. It's a sweet deal if you can get it.
It actually doesn't say, but doesn't say whether Grayson Frick was actually a Marine veteran benefits. But I thought it was interesting. It's like, oh yeah, this ties into Conlon and my son loosely, weirdly.
Let's see. So we cut to Georgia, where they have the murder trial, and Iggy's being questioned on the stand. Here she admits to saying that she threatened to kill him, but that saying that she didn't actually kill him. She just said that she would.
Yeah.
Then we cut to Ruth is being questioned and says that Iggy is the best friend she ever had and loves her. So this is kind of like her. This is the best close you get to her like declaring love for her. But here she coax it with like, "Oh, she's my friend." So
yeah.
They're not directly saying that. They're a couple. Then the Reverend takes the stand and he swears on his own Bible. And then here was where the Reverend covers for Iggy and Big George, and then you find out like, oh, the Reverend lied, but he didn't actually swear on a Bible. It was just a copy of Moby Dick, so that the Reverend covered himself. It's like, it's okay as long as they didn't swear on the Bible.
Which I think is great because I love Moby Dick, the novel. So
yeah.
it's like, I mean, if he swore to on to whom the bell tolls, which would have been published like years after the events, cooler. But well, Moby Dick's good.
And it's because the Reverend, like he's saying, like because the Reverend holds such esteem because he's a man of God, like nobody's gonna go against him. So the judge basically just throws out the case and declares it an accident.
Yeah, it's a very John Grisham like. Southern law thing. Like, oh, the judge is like, it's all a fraud, so we're good to go. It's like, yeah, a man was cooked and eaten to hide evidence, but yeah.
I mean, that's never brought up. Like, they don't know that's how the conclusion, because they're just like, well, there's no body, so obviously it's an accident.
Yeah.
Then we cut to present day. Evelyn is breaking down a wall in her house with a sledgehammer, which I don't know if they're trying to draw comparisons to Misery or if that's just happenstance.
Yeah, I'm not sure about that one.
Because that's a famous scene where she hobbles him by like putting a 2x4 between his ankles and hitting one side with a sledgehammer, and it breaks both ankles at the same time, or something like that.
It's an amazing scene. She's using the war cry of the name.
And then Ed comes in and he's all angry, and then like Evelyn is finally direct with George and puts the blame on him for not trying in the marriage, and he's kind of taken aback by it, because he doesn't have a counter argument to that. He's like, why can't you be normal? It's like, hey, I tried so many things, you didn't do anything at all, so it's not my fault.
Yeah.
Then we cut to Evelyn goes to the nursing home again. A nurse tells her Ninny's house was demolished, but they didn't tell Ninny. So Ellen visits Ninny's room, which actually isn't her new room. It's like Mrs. Otis's room, where she's laying in bed. Where it's here, they make it look like seemingly weak, like she's like dying, but like that's what you're supposed to infer. Because she usually has so much energy, and here she's just like, sleepy and groggy. It's like, does that mean she's dying, or did she just wake up from a nap?
Yeah.
She has pictures all over the wall of like Iggy and Ruth. Here's where we learn that Evelyn turned 83. Or not Evelyn. Ninny turns 83. Evelyn brings fried green tomatoes. Who Ninny says like they're just like how she remembers. And then we have flashback. We have Ruth comes down with sickness and is dying. I read on Wikipedia it said apparently it's cancer. I thought is this just consumption again? Because that's in old past movies, they love to kill people with the consumption and have them dying in bed. On
consumption was basically tuberculosis, as I understand. Yeah,
but here that said that what I read, it said it was supposed to be cancer. Well, there's you have what's her name? Sipsy, like constantly has drugs and is like constantly pulling out syringes and injecting her.
That's morphine, baby.
Oh,
Deep
okay.
sleep. Milk of the poppy, as they would say in Game of Thrones. But yeah.
We have Buddy comes in dejected because the kids like don't like that they have to play baseball with him, and he has to like overcome his disability of only having one arm. So apparently they hit him, and he's getting mad, and then
yeah, it's basically described as they're like throwing bean balls and hitting him in the head.
Yeah. I thought it was a punch. He said he got hit in the head. I thought he meant like a punch, but maybe they're just throwing the balls at him or something.
Yeah, they're just throwing the balls at his head. I mean, as I understand it, I don't know. I'd have to go to my baseball expert friend. But yeah, that's like basically like aiming at someone's head.
Yeah,
because they're swinging with one hand, which would be,
doable but hard.
Yeah, very hard.
So Iggy and Buddy like kind of are off at the
take it from someone whose only like athletic achievements was being able to hit like out, to the center field. Like, that was the only thing I could do in baseball. Was like, oh, I couldn't knock it out of the park, but I could get like 3 bases out of it. And that was using 2 hands. So like, yeah, they're trying to hit you in the head with 1 hand. So,
which is probably the only thing I regret from Little League, because I hated baseball, but I just wanted to hit 1 home run. I had like 4 in the park home runs, but that just becomes from like, an 11-year-old misses catching the ball, and then they bobble it around for like 2 minutes, and you just get the run.
No, my experience with Little League is like, if I really concentrated on Little League and just gave up everything else, like I didn't care if the ball hit me or whatever, like I could always do a home run. I could do inside the park home run, outside the park home run. But that was because I couldn't run very fast because I was fat. It's like, oh, I better hit that ball really far. Yeah, and to this day, I'm really good at like hitting things, even at high speed. But I never really associated that with anything because I never thought I had any athletic ability until I realized like nobody else had any athletic ability either. So, and I have like family members that played like baseball and football, at a professional level. It's like, oh, I should have developed that, but I didn't because I was just fat.
Iggy and Buddy are at the dam. Iggy's trying to cheer up Buddy by telling him like stories of Tall Tale, but basically he's heard everyone she's had to tell. So then she kind of just, I forget what she says. She doesn't necessarily cheer him up. She's just like, hey, things are going to get dark and you got to be strong for the future.
Yeah. It was kind of like the modern version of, like with the gay people. It's like, oh, it's going to get better. Just hang on. Like, don't kill yourself. Yeah. It was a version of that. Yeah.
Then we cut to one last gathering with Ruth. Like Buddy's in there at first, but then he leaves, and then Sipsy leaves, and then Ruth wants to hear her tell the tall tale about the ducks carrying away the lake and like landing it in Georgia somewhere, and somewhere in between and she's not looking at Ruth while she's telling the story because she's like crying and looking away from her, and somewhere within the story Ruth dies during the telling, and so Iggy cries over the body, and then Sipsy kind of hugs her and gives her support. Sipsy also
this is when I started crying too.
Yeah. And Sipsy also does stuff where like hangs like a cloth like over some pictures of Ruth, and then like stops the clock. Yeah. Which I guess is straightforward. It's like, yeah, this is being respected. This is when she died or something like that. But I also don't know if this had greater meaning or not. But it was like, you remember it.
Yeah, I consider this like this is part of like Southern death rituals.
Okay.
Yeah. I don't know if it's true or not, but it seems cool.
God's gonna get confused by all these pictures. Which soul do I take? And it's got to cover the pictures.
We're gonna deceive God with our complex contract negotiations.
So I have that being in Act 2. We have Act 3. It's Ruth's funeral. There's like a turnout from all the people that she's helped over the years. Because, just through her kindness and giving people free food and all stuff like that. Here's where we get, like, basically, like, they show Smokey there, and then, like, the voiceover explains that Smokey died later on with one possession on him, and it's a picture of Ruth, so he was apparently in love with Ruth. But, like, not necessarily in a sexual way. It's just, like, everybody loved Ruth. And
it was a drunk's love, is what I call it. Yeah.
It's the only hope he had in his life, because she gave him a blanket one time.
Yeah.
And that was enough. And we come back to the present here, where basically Evelyn expresses her fear of death, and then Ninny tries to.
Real quick, because with Smokey, like Ruth's love was really like cold and distant.
Yeah.
Whereas Itchy's love was like sincere. It's like, oh, I understand. Like, you're a drunk, and I can embrace that to a certain level, but it was almost like a cold love from
because that first scene where she gives him the blanket and he like wakes up and he's like, thank you, there's kind of this weirdness of, like, I was probably thinking of like that Patch Adams movie where, like, the lady decides she's gonna help a guy and that guy like murders her, and I was getting that kind of feeling off the scene. Like, oh no, she's gonna help this guy and he'll murder her later on, but it's actually
I kind of thought that too. It's like, oh, how is this guy gonna betray his friend? Didn't end up happening, which was nice.
Yeah. That's not this movie.
No.
But reality has taught us that will happen.
Oh yeah. The drunks will always fuck your eyeballs out.
So Evelyn's expressing her fear of death, and there's just like general, like, I forget the line. She says like she's too old to be young and too young to be old, and she's just like, this is the midlife crisis stuff going on, so she doesn't know.
And that really resonated with me, to be honest with you, because I feel the same way. It's like, oh, I'm in youth culture and I'm also old.
Yeah.
It's like, I'm not quite a boomer, but I'm also something else.
And then
and you millennials.
I mean, you had a Zoomer, so, or no, is he a Doomer? I don't. That's all. It's all
social science bullshit.
Yeah.
Technically, he's a Doomer because I like the term, but he's actually a Zoomer. And he was also raised different because we're better people, me and Steve. That's what we say, at least.
Ninny tries cheering up Evelyn, but like being like, "Hey, I'm on death's door. Look at me. I've accepted it." It's like, you need to.
Yeah, it was kind of a weird, like, don't be afraid of death. It's like, oh, like, that's the end of existence.
It comes for us all.
Yeah.
And someone will remember you, and someone will remember them. It's like, are you sure about that?
I don't know. We're all just kind of like pictures in a book.
Well, we have 15 years of a podcast. Technically, we'll be remembered forever as long as the infrastructure works, but I kind of doubt that.
Yeah. And will we be remembered? We, like, in 30 years, we'll be like, hey, this is the podcast no one ever heard about. These guys were actually, like, insightful but weird because they couldn't articulate their opinions very well. But, if you do the work, it's great. Aren't doing the work because they have full-time jobs, which is why they suck and they're cool at the same time.
Ed comes home with flowers to apologize for not being present in their marriage. Evelyn is rebuilding the wall. She's building a room for Ninny for her to stay with them, like, in her last days. At least that's how it's made it seem.
Which is like super sad if you think about it.
It's like, we're going to bring this old lady in. She's going to die. And we're going to watch. And only I'm going to have feelings. And you're just going to be weirdly discomforted by it. Ed doesn't think it's a good idea at all. He's like, hey, Evelyn, you can have all these ideas you want, but it's not going to happen. And then she's like, never ever tell me never, or something like that, which is I think that's a phrase from Idgy or something like that. No, it's that's Ruth saying. That's Ruth saying.
Yeah, Ruth says that. Yeah, Ed's right for the wrong reasons, which always sucks for everyone because it's like, oh, damn, I wanted to believe this fantasy. It's like, nah, no, it's not good.
But Evelyn pushes forward with it anyways. Then Evelyn goes to the nursing home again to find out that Ninny died earlier this morning, or so we are led to believe. Because there's a new nurse in there. She's taken down all of Ninny's keepsakes. And then the regular nurse shows up and to clarify that Miss Otis died. That's Miss Otis's room. And that Ninny was discharged to go back to her home for some reason, which makes me, it's like, that's the, like, wait, what's the logic of the situation? What's Ninny doing? Was Ninny ever a part of this place? Was she visiting? What's going on?
Ninny's lies were actually true. And it's like, oh, we were wrong for not believing Ninny's lies, which means we should all believe our own lies, everything, all the time, because why not?
But apparently, I don't know, I guess the thing is, like, she was just staring at the nursing home because Miss Otis was there, and then when she died, she's like, well, there's no reason for me to stay here. I'm still a slightly able-bodied octogenarian. So,
but when it was introduced to us as a concept, we are like, well, that's bullshit. She's actually here. And then we find out, no, what she was saying was true.
Yeah.
Which goes back to my point about, like, all the bullshit we believe should actually be true. Because it makes sense.
So then Evelyn drives out to Ninny's old house where she's sitting outside, not taking the absence of her house well because they tore it down because it was condemned. Which this is like it's like was this the third good house, or was this just some house nearby the Whistle Stop Cafe?
Well, I mean, that depends on what you believe about this movie.
Okay.
Because here's the whole concept here is, like, was Ninny and Iggy the same person or not?
See, that's what I always believed. But as for when I looked up stuff on the internet, they're like, no. And, like, their argument against it is that, like, in the voiceover, she says she loved Buddy, like, sexually, essentially, is what they implied. But I was like, well, I mean, it could be a familial love. It doesn't necessarily have to be a sexual one.
Yeah.
But the thing is, in the book, they are two separate characters.
Yeah.
So that's but this is different from the book. So, because in the book,
for me, for Nathan's universe, I believe that Iggy and Ninny are the same person.
Yes, that makes sense to me.
I love that because it's like, oh yeah, you can just you can create your own reality.
Yeah,
you can be that person, whether it's true or not, I don't care. Because, like I said, I appreciate the reality of a private life.
Yeah,
that's my thing. It's like, yeah, you can be whatever you want to be because I respect your right to be that person.
And the other argument against it is that, like, it's like, well, no, she ended up marrying Clayton, who was Iggy's brother, and then they had a child, and then, like, he died and the child died, and then that's what she left to. Which I always just believe that it's like, actually, I don't know. Yeah, well, yeah, I guess. Yeah, so that's more of an argument against it. But, like, yeah, the movie's more interesting if Iggy is just Ninny. But
yeah, I mean, yeah, Iggy is the bee charmer, and
also it's the South. So if you want to have, hey, it's the South. If you like they said, her child was born with disabilities, so it's like, okay, inbred incest stuff that could lead to a child with disabilities. Like, that's all there too.
Yeah.
That's uncomfortable, but true.
For me, Iggy as Ninny is great.
Yeah. But so, like, she, but, like, it doesn't get into the times like, it's hard being the lesbian in the past. They just kind of get into it. But it's like, she had her as good of a lesbian relationship as she could, and then she just moved into a traditional thing because that's what it was expected of her. Like, that's sort of how I imagine the character. That's an interesting kind of sad character, but fulfilling in the same way. It's like she got to live her true life for a while, and then she just kind of moved into just a casual, like, this is what's expected of me thing, and it wasn't as rewarding, but got through life. So
Yeah, I mean that's like in the modern world where we like have all these gender roles mixed up. And I try to put myself in that because it's like, oh, I'm just trying to understand this. I always imagine myself as a lesbian. And it's like, yeah, if I was a lesbian, I'd be, edgy. Yeah, I'm gonna pretend to be in the acceptable role, but my real love is like, no, I love this woman, and that makes sense to me. I don't know if that makes. So to me, and like with the modern sensibilities, that makes sense. I don't know if that's true or not, but that's what it is.
Also, it's just weird if she isn't Iggy, because then it's like this thing's like, Iggy's still alive, and then it's like, yeah, but she's not here, so that doesn't mean anything. Ninny's the one here.
Yeah. Yeah, Ninny's are like a real person. Iggy's just a picture in a book. Like,
yeah,
that doesn't affect anything that's going on from X point to the present. So yeah.
So yeah, Evelyn meets Ninny at their demolished house, and then Evelyn says she's going to take her home. We get a flashback to Ninny tells the story of Sipsy's deathbed confession of what really happened to Frank. And so we get a replay of Frank taking Buddy, and it's revealed that Sipsy killed Frank with a frying pan after he knocked her out, and then she came to, and as Smokey was kind of like trying to keep him away, Sipsy kills him with the frying pan. And they all get together and trying to figure out how they're going to dispose of Frank's body. And this is where Iggy brings up, it's hog boiling time, which I don't know what that means. It means like that's like extreme. We're gonna put the body in a pot and boil it to such an extreme temperature that it's just going to melt an entire body. Which is what I got out of it, because they always say like, what's the secret to this barbecue? Why does it taste so good? It's like, it's in the sauce, meaning they liquefied his body.
Yeah.
Rather than they butchered him and made barbecue out of it.
Yeah, it's very Fight Club. It's like, how do you make the best soap? It's like, oh, out of human, fat, liposuction clinics. Yeah, okay.
We cut to Big George is cooking barbecue. Here it's more on the line. It's like, oh, he's cooking Frank, but but yeah, nothing. There's not a human body skeleton on the smoker. It's just racks of pork ribs.
Yeah.
And then we cut back to the present, and Ninny and Evelyn happen upon Ruth's grave, where there's a jar of honey and a note, and that's where it's like it's a note from Iggy, and this is where Evelyn says Iggy's alive, and I wrote like, Ninny's Iggy, right? And because like Ninny's like, I think we might see her, and this is where it's like more obvious, is because Evelyn looks directly at her, like being like, oh, something has been revealed. It's like, we just might. Me, kind of like Iggy's kind of like a almost like a different personality for Ninny, where it's like, but not, I don't know. Again, that's where the thing where it's like confirms your idea that like, oh, they're the same person, but they're just not saying it directly.
Yeah, I mean, I like that because as Iggy or Ninny, I'd always be a lesbian. So.
Then we get a voiceover of Ninny saying how like basically the town died along with Ruth in the cafe going out, which is a very sad way to end the movie.
Yeah, it's kind of weird. It's like, yeah, there's no future after this. Oh, really? Okay.
And then Ninny leaves with Evelyn, and it's just credits. And that's the end of the movie.
Yeah, that's fried green tomatoes, everyone.
So you have the recipe for fried green tomatoes?
I do, and let's review that. Let's see how to make them. Let's see. Okay, you need 4 large green tomatoes, which understand if they're not red, they're pre-ripened. So you need 2 eggs, a half a cup of milk, 1 cup of all-purpose flour, a half a cup of cornmeal, and a half a cup of panko breadcrumbs, and then salt and black pepper for frying. Or I'm sorry, a quarter of vegetable oil for frying. So you basically
So it's
cut
almost just
these.
like fried chicken, but you just replace it with green tomatoes.
Yeah, I mean you cut up pre-ripened tomatoes, which are green, and you dredge them in cornmeal and flour and eggs, and then I mean you use vegetable oil in this recipe, but in reality you're going to use
Yeah,
like
any
animal fat.
yeah, any fat, will do.
Yeah,
Yeah, vegetable is just fat, just made out of vegetables. Have you
yeah. I
ever
mean use animal fat if you want the real flavor.
have you
It's
ever
a
ha-
oh,
have you ever actually had fried green tomatoes?
I have not.
Me neither.
No, I don't. Actually, there's weirdly not been a lot of fried foods in my life, which is why my when I get checked for like cholesterol, it's always pretty low because I don't don't fry a lot of foods. But fried green tomatoes, you dredge them in egg, flour, cornmeal, and then fry them in vegetable oil. Heat it up to 375 degrees. Fry them until they're crisp, and then flip them over, and then serve hot and enjoy. Oh, you can also can use ranch dressing to dip them in, which will make them up to 1,400 calories per serving.
I mean, like, I've had like fried pickles and fried okra, so it's kind of like all the same thing. But
Yeah, I mean, fried food is amazing, but it's still it's like 1,400 calories per serving of 4. And you're going to eat like 8, 6 maybe. So, yeah, it's going to be like 3,000 calories. Fried food's terrible for you, but it feels great.
oh yeah,
Oh, yeah.
yeah. I always enjoy fried chicken with just honey, and like mostly I just enjoy dipping the fried skin in the honey and just eating that like it's a potato chip of fried chicken skin.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Yeah, I know this was released in 91, but it really came out in 92, and that's it. And 92 was a strong year for strong female characters in movies. Because you had this, you had Basic Instinct, you had A League of Their Own. You got Single White Female, you can throw that in there. You got Death Becomes Her, Sister Act. What's the others? Alien 3.
Alien 3 came out the same year?
Yeah, it says well on this it says 92, so.
Oh, okay.
The Twin Peaks movie came out.
Fire Walk with Me.
Yeah. What else was there? But yeah, this was a good year for movies starring women. Yeah, because I remember going to I really liked A League of Their Own growing up.
I've never watched that movie. Is that the one with Tom Hanks?
Yeah.
Like there's no crying in baseball?
Yep.
Okay. I'm going to have to watch
Which
that.
they made a TV show on it, but I never watched the TV show. I had The Bodyguard, which I don't know, I guess, yeah. And that was most famous for, an Innocent Blood. It's like a vampire movie. It stars like I've never actually seen it, but I've heard about it. It's like, sounds like an interesting vampire movie.
What's the Nicolas Cage movie about vampires where he like totally self-destructed around the character?
Is that Vampire's Kiss? Is that that?
It could be.
Or is that weird? Yeah, Vampire's Kiss. Yep. That's one where he's like yells the alphabet.
Oh, yeah. That was the one. I've just heard about it on the internet. It's like,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, he has that new movie where he plays a vampire where it's called Renfield. but no, you're probably thinking of Vampire's Kiss. Well, we're sending a probe to space containing the supercut of the imperfect collection that is the Verhoeven Effect. Nathan, what scene are we sending into space from this movie?
This was a real tough one, thinking about it. I would have to say it was the scene where her husband was calling on the phone for directions, and the existence of the cafe was revealed as the Whistle Stop Cafe for fried green tomatoes. Because the whole movie is just basically like like a vision of the past, I guess. So I would say like this would make the most sense to like show this 15 minutes of the movie.
And a ghost train goes by.
Yeah, because the train is just the train coming through town is just a symbol of slaughter. Who's gonna die or be run over or lose a limb? Based on this train that we're depending on for our economic survival
and resources.
Yeah, how do we do this? And it's like we it's like midsummer, like we offer up a sacrifice of a human body or a limb or whatever. It's it's the only thing that makes sense in the Southern context for how our economy works.
Well, if you like what you heard, and how couldn't you can find us at verhoeffect.com on whatever podcast platform you're listening to. You can rate us. You can rate us whatever you want, but the only thing the algorithm listens to is the highest rating. So give us the highest rating. Remember, you control the algorithm. The algorithm doesn't control you. At verhoeffect.com, we have listener support where you can support us on a monthly stipend of either 99 cents, $4.99, or $9.99. We're on Twitter at Verhoeven Effect for as long as that's the thing. That Twitter's getting weird again.
Yeah, it's becoming, psychopathic. How it works.
Yeah, now they're limiting like how much, like if you scroll through like 600 tweets, they'll like lock off your access for the day unless you pay them $8. It's like, yeah, this isn't worth it.
Yeah, this is gonna what do you call that? Descend into a world of bullshit that doesn't matter.
You can find us.
They send us money thing versus like we're providing actual content that is valuable.
You can find us on Facebook at Verhoeven Effect. You can find us on YouTube at American Greed Factory and watch both this and that show live and unedited. We also have t-shirts at belowthecollar.com/Greed Factory. So for the Verhoeven Effect podcast, I'm Conlon.
And I'm Nathan.
Goodbye, America.